Chapter 2541. Yuxiang let out a bitter laugh. Full of holes. There were 3 masters in the sect, and 2 of them had become traitors to the enemy. If the higher-ups were like this, one could imagine what the situation was like at the bottom. Where did you put the slaves? Yuxiang struggled to ask. As a member of the corpse clan, only when their souls were destroyed would they truly perish. Their physical bodies alone could not destroy them. You don't need to know about this. The deputy master's eyes turned cold, and he charged at her fiercely. Suddenly, the 4 pieces of Yuxiang corpse sank into the ground in a strange manner and disappeared without a trace. The deputy master sneered. Child's play. She stomped her foot on the ground, and the whole ground shook violently. Not far in front of her, traces of black blood kept coming out from the depths of the ground, soaking the ground. The blood stain continued to move forward. Do you think you can run away? The deputy master flew over and his palm went deep into the ground. He grabbed Yuxiang and pulled her out from the ground. The moment she appeared, Yuxiang eyes shot out a large amount of blue light and engulfed the deputy master in an instant. However, the deputy master was not afraid and sneered. High-level corpse fire? What a pity, it might be useful to those in the Nirvana realm, but it's useless to me. The deputy master was unharmed by the corpse fire. Instead, he slapped Yuxiang head, aiming for the vital part of her soul. At the critical moment, Yuxiang let out a low roar. Amidst the boundless pain, his body self-destructed. To prevent her soul from being destroyed, large pieces of flesh and blood immediately merged into the ground and continued to sink deeper. The deputy master tried to step on the ground several times, but he could not shake Yuxiang away. What are you standing there for? Aren't you going to look for him? If he escapes and tells the sect, we'll all die. The deputy master was extremely fearful of the sect leader. The difference between an Earth Dao master and a Xian Dao master was like heaven and earth. It would not take much effort for the sect leader to kill the 2 of them. The chief steward stood in the distance and felt around. He said, "Don't worry, he won't be able to escape from the mine with his injuries. Besides, we have people guarding the entrance of the mine. If he shows himself, he'll definitely die. The most important thing now is to quickly carry out that mission. Otherwise, if the sect leader discovers what we've done in the sect, everything will be over." Because of that, the second steward was unwilling to give up and headed to the deepest part of the mine with the head steward. Not long after, Yuxiang emerged from the ground and regained her human form. His face was extremely pale, and his aura was extremely weak. It was impossible for him to recover in a short period of time. Moreover, what he was most worried about was that, if there was a change in the mine, would the higher-ups still play? Brother Su, hold on. Yuxiang struggled to walk towards the exit of the mine. He wanted to inform Su Yu to leave the faction as soon as possible and never come back before the great change occurred. He stumbled along the way, and after a whole day, he finally reached the exit. However, what made him despair was that not only was there a powerful formation seal at the exit, there were also many powerhouses hiding in the dark. Among them, there was no lack of late-stage Nirvana cultivators. Moreover, there were dozens of them. Once he showed himself, he would definitely die. His heart was burning with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. That was because the seal isolated even communication. The people outside had no idea what was happening in the mine. At that moment, Su Yu returned to the Greater One sect. To him, the Greater One sect no longer had any place for him to stay. The reason why he came back was to look for Yuxiang. Before he left, he wanted to advise Yuxiang to leave the Greater One sect as soon as possible. Brother Yu. He knocked on Yuxiang resting room. However, there was no response from the door. It shouldn't be. He used his transparent eye to scan the room, but there was no one there. Moreover, he noticed that there was a thick layer of dust at the door of Yuxiang room. Something's wrong. Yu Xiongwan didn't come back. After he and Yu Xiongwan returned from Nanming City, they were summoned by the head steward before they could return to their resting room. They were then locked up in the heavenly prison and had no time to come back. Now that the door was still covered in dust, it was enough to show that Yu Xiongwan had not returned after she went to Jinjia. Could something really have happened? Su Yu's eyes darkened. When he bid farewell to Yu Xiongwan yesterday, he had a feeling of unease. Could it be? His figure flashed and he headed toward the mine. When he looked inside, his face sank, and he discovered that the entrance of the mine had been sealed from the inside out. Su Yu's expression changed, and he quickly deduced, "There's trouble." He took out his communication jade pendant and sent a message to the hall master of the Hall of Affairs. "There's been a change in the mine. Please inform the sect leader." He was not qualified to meet the sect leader directly, so he could only ask the hall master of the affairs hall to pass the message. However, after thinking about it for a moment, Su Yu sent a message to a few other hall masters, including the Miaoxiang hall master, who he had made a deal with before. At almost the same time. More than 10 hall masters received the message at the same time. When the hall master of the Hall of Affairs received the message, his first reaction was to stand up abruptly. Then, he became terrified and uneasy. After that, he sent a message to several hall masters. In the end, the reply he received was the same. They had also received Su Yu's reminder. The hall master of the Hall of Affairs' face darkened. He gritted his teeth and sent a message to the other hall masters. "Since the matter has been exposed, we can only move ahead of schedule. All of you, rush out of the sect leader's territory. You must kill any sect leader who tries to send a message to the sect leader." Meanwhile, the hall master of Wonderful Fragrance Hall was lazily counting the netherworld crystals. Suddenly, he received a message. After opening it lazily, his expression changed. "There's a change in the mine?" The mine was the foundation of the Greater One sect. How could it be lost? Moreover, Su Yu's tone was very strict. He actually needed to inform the faction master. "Seems like something big has happened." Hall Master Wonderful Fragrance immediately moved toward the sect master's domain. However, just as she was about to arrive, Hall Master Wonderful Fragrance's eyes turned, and she slowed down her pace. She put on an exceptionally precious cloak of invisibility. In this way, no one would be able to detect him anywhere he went. When she neared the entrance of the sect leader's domain, her pupils shrank as she realized that the entrance of the sect leader's domain was already in chaos. The corpses of several hall masters lay on the ground. There were also 2 hall masters who were besieged by a group of hall masters. Hall Master Wonderful Fragrance's heart trembled. What happened? They were on the same side, yet they were fighting with each other? She calmed herself down and waited quietly for the battle to end. The leading hall master of the Hall of Affairs said warily, "Quick, clean up the scene and hide nearby." Swish, swish, swish. The surroundings were cleaned up and they hid again. They only had to wait for the next hall master who came to send a message to arrive. Then, they would join forces and annihilate them. Hall Master Wonderful Fragrance's face was pale. She hid in the dark and did not dare to move. She was afraid that she would give herself away and end up dead. In the mine, Yu Xiongwan waited for a long time but could not find an opportunity. However, as time passed, he knew that the situation above would only get worse. Once it became chaotic, Su Yu would definitely be in danger. Chapter 2542. During his days in the Greater One sect, Su Yu had always taken care of him. Su Yu would never forget to share half of the benefits with him. He would never be able to repay Su Yu's kindness. Swoosh, his figure dashed out, heading straight for the exit. Kill! The strong fighters hiding in the dark immediately took action, especially the late-stage Nirvana fighter. His attack was even fiercer. A long sword extended infinitely and pierced through Yu Xiongwan's right arm. Yu Xiongwan gritted his teeth in pain. With a loud roar, He grabbed his right arm with his left hand and pulled it off. Then, he smashed his arm on the exit seal. Poof! An incomparably bright blue flame immediately burst out from the arm, burning the formation. As long as the spell was burned, he could activate the communication jade pendant he had prepared and tell Su Yu to leave this place quickly. Stop him! The late-stage Nirvana fighter roared and slashed with his long sword. Yu Xiangwan's body was cut in half. Not only that, the blade of the sword contained a powerful force that could harm the soul. In just a short while, Yu Xiangwan's soul was torn to pieces, causing him unbearable pain. The only fortunate thing was, his high-level corpse fire had successfully burned a small hole in the seal. Seeing the opportunity, Yu Xiangwan took out the jade pendant he had prepared and was about to activate it. But the late-stage Nirvana fighter had already predicted Yu Xiangwan's plan. He slashed with his long sword and cut off Yu Xiangwan's entire left arm. Along with the jade pendant, it quickly fell to the ground. Ah! How could Yu Xiangwan accept this? With only his chest and head left, he quickly chased after Su Yu. But at that moment, the long sword swept over again and cut off his head. The endless pain and the damage to his soul caused Yu Xiangwan's vision to blur. He was about to fall into a coma. No, I can't die yet. I have already died once. My death is not to be regretted, but Brother Su, he still has his own dream to accomplish. With a roar, Yu Xiangwan, who only had his head left, pounced over and bit the jade pendant. Then, he bit down hard and successfully crushed the jade pendant. A message shot into the sky and passed through the spell. Brother Su, run. Yu Xiangwan used the last bit of his strength to roar, until the ice-cold blade pierced through his head and nailed him to the ground. The late-stage Nirvana Ascendant withdrew his sword and threw away the head. He immediately looked at the formation and shouted, "Immediately repair the seal." However, at this moment, a ray of light fell from the top of the formation without warning. What followed was a bone-chilling roar that sounded like it came from the 9 underworld. "All of you, go die." The glow grew brighter and turned into 8 different colors, which formed an 8-colored lotus. The lotus throne was so powerful that it crushed the damaged array and forced its way in. On the lotus seat stood a young man with silver hair that was dancing in the wind. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Chaotic space burial. With a command, the entire universe appeared at the entrance of the mine. Then, the universe was torn apart, turning into sharp and malevolent strands that exploded in all directions. Puff, 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 puff. No one could hide. In an instant, more than 10 people were pierced by the sharp space and died. Death Domain. A gigantic stone tablet suddenly appeared. The word "die" on it exploded with endless black light that shone in all directions. Anyone who was illuminated by it would be instantly decayed on the spot, while those who were severely injured would die instantly. Life deprivation. However, Su Yu did not stop. With a point of his finger, a towering ancient tree that was 10,000 feet tall appeared. Its roots danced like wild snakes, entangling everyone it could catch. Anyone who was touched by it would immediately die of exhaustion. The 3 domains went down. At the entrance, only the late-stage Nirvana Ascendant was still alive. His eyes were full of fear. The master of the 3 supreme domains. Are you the descendant of the master, or? You are nothing. I only want you to die. Su Yu's fingers moved continuously. Petals fell from the lotus seat under his feet. Every time a petal fell, the late-stage Nirvana Ascendant screamed as if he had lost something. When all 8 petals fell, the late-stage Nirvana Ascendant had been turned into ashes, leaving behind a long sword that had lost its owner. He had been deprived of the 8 domains. For a creature to exist in the world, the basic structure was the 8 domains. If all of them were lost, of course they would be erased from the world. Su Yu flew down and came to the side of Yu Xiangwan's head. His angry eyes were filled with emotion. He had used his life to tell Suyu to run. How could I have befriended someone like you? Suyu was moved by her words. He stretched out a finger and tapped on his head. Resurrect the dead. However, there was no movement. How could this be? Could Yu Xiong-wan also be a descendant of some powerful bloodline? He looked carefully and realized that Yu Xiong-wan's body was emitting traces of corpse energy. Corpse clan. Suyu exclaimed, but there was no contempt in his eyes. He knew that not all of the corpse clan deserved to die. Among them were the corpse clan that he would remember for the rest of his life. For example, Zhuji. Suyu's eyes flashed with sorrow. His resurrection was only useful for living creatures. The corpse clan was a dead existence that could not be resurrected. No! Suyu found all the scattered corpses and pieced them together. Soul, life, reincarnation, creation. One after another, Suyu injected domains into Yu Xiong-wan's body to rebuild his existence. However, there was no change. If the corpse clan died, they would really die. Brother Su. Suddenly, Yu Xiong-wan's head spoke slowly. His left eye had been pierced by a sword, leaving only his right eye intact. A trace of wetness rolled in his right eye. Brother Yu, I will definitely save you. Su Yu's eyes were filled with tears as he injected the 8 great domains again and again. Yu Xiong-wan blinked his right eye, and a drop of tear fell silently. Don't waste your energy. I am a descendant of the corpse ancestor ancient god. Your domain of life cannot save me. Before he died, he revealed his identity. A descendant of the ancient god. The 7th ancient god, a descendant of the corpse ancestor ancient god. Su Yu's eyes were foggy. A descendant of the ancient god, a descendant of the ancient god, who could not be resurrected. Don't speak, I must save you. Su Yu's eyes were filled with tears. He was the only friend he had made after coming to the 8-star civilization. Yu Xiong-wan said weakly, I am very glad that you did not despise my identity of the corpse clan. In front of Su Yu, he felt the most inferior because of his identity as a corpse clan. He was worried that Su Yu would look down on him, reject him, and stay away from him. However, Su Yu knew that he was a corpse clan member and did not despise him as he imagined. This gave Yu Xiong-wan a last glimmer of relief. Finally, he did not let Su Yu down. Yu Xiong-wan closed his blue eye, and a relieved smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. It's really good to know you, no. Su Yu bellowed at the sky. His roar shook the mine, shook the entire Greater One sect, and reached the highest heavens. He had very few friends in his life. Why did he lose one when he had just met one? Time freeze. Su Yu's eyes were filled with madness, and 2 hourglasses of time appeared behind him. He froze time at the moment of his death. As long as he was still breathing, he must do everything possible to save him. However, how could he save him? When time freeze could no longer be maintained, it would be the day when Yu Xiong-wan completely disappeared from the world. He rummaged through everything he had on him, but there was no healing item at all. Time passed bit by bit. Su Yu had nothing he could use. The time was almost up, and Yu Xiong-wan would die completely. At this moment, the baby in the space storage device actually crawled out on its own. He actually completely ignored Su Yu's time freeze domain. Perhaps sensing Su Yu's sorrow, he understood what was going on and took out a 5th grade 9 Serenities crystal. Then, he chiseled through the middle and pointed inside. Su Yu was puzzled. You want me to put his head and body inside? The baby nodded continuously. Su Yu did not quite understand what this was for. However, he had no other choice but to put Yu Xiong-wan's head and body into the 9 Serenities crystal. Then, the baby sealed the 9 Serenities crystal. He pressed his body tightly against the 9 Serenities crystal. The words of the heavenly book on his body released a blazing light. An incredible scene appeared before Su Yu. The 9 Serenities crystal resonated and released a cold and gloomy energy. Under the effect of that energy, Yu Xiangwan's body actually regained a trace of vitality. The closed blue eyes slowly opened again and looked weakly at the object in front of him. I'm not dead. Su Yu's face was filled with joy, joy that he had not felt in a long time. Yu Xiangwan's body was regenerating at a speed visible to the naked eye. When he recovered a small part of his body, he began to reconstruct his own body. After a cup of tea's time, the baby's head drooped tiredly. Su Yu carefully put it back into the space storage device and looked at the 9 Serenities crystal in front of him. Inside was a complete Yu Xiangwan. At first glance, it looked like a 9 Serenities crystal. Su Yu suddenly realized that the corpses dug out from the 9 Serenities crystal were even living creatures. Was it similar to the process just now? After they died, they were placed inside and waited for the baby to be resurrected one by one using the words of the heavenly book on his body? In an instant, Su Yu seemed to have seen an incomparably magnificent grand plan. However, this was just his guess. Brother Su, aren't you going to let me out? Are you planning to sell me as a 9 Serenities crystal? Yu Xiangwan knocked on the 9 Serenities crystal. Su Yu smiled and shattered the 9 Serenities crystal with a punch. But to be honest, if he really sold him like that, he might really be able to fetch a sky-high price. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Brother Su, leave immediately. The Great Steward and the Second Steward are traitors. Moreover, they seem to have an even greater conspiracy. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late. Yu Xiangwan urged. Su Yu was deeply convinced. He was worried that the Great Steward and the Second Steward were not a real threat. Chapter 2543. That was not something the two stewards could give. Something even bigger was going to happen. The two of them left the mine and were about to leave the faction's territory to escape to the outside world. But the area above the mine was already in chaos. All the hall masters, deputy hall masters, and disciples were fighting to the death. The appearance of the two of them immediately attracted the attention of the hall masters. Kill! The abilities of the hall masters were impressive. Unless Su Yu revealed his 8 great domains in front of everyone, there was no way they could deal with them. He said he wanted to escape, but how could he escape? Go! Find the faction master! Su Yu shouted. Now, the only one who could put out the fire was the faction master. As long as he knew the situation in the faction, he could save the day. Yu Xiangwan agreed. No matter how fast they escaped, they might not be able to escape the faction. Even if they escaped, how far could they go? Instead, they might as well find the faction master. The two of them did not retreat, but instead ran toward the depths of the faction. The hall masters saw that they had no intention of escaping and could not be bothered to chase, because there were more of their people waiting in the depths of the faction. Not long after, Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan fought their way to the outside of the faction master's territory. Wait! Su Yu stopped her, his eyes narrowing. There's an ambush here. Fierce battles were going on everywhere else, but the entrance to the sect leader's domain was frighteningly quiet. With the faction in such a mess, there was no reason that no one came to inform the faction master. There could only be one. Those who came to inform the faction master did not succeed, all of them dying here. Hence, he speculated that there must be an enemy ambush nearby. Once they appeared, they would most likely die. There are indeed ambushes, and there are many of them, more than double the number in the mine. Yu Xiangwan said seriously. Su Yu's heart turned cold. If that was the case, it was impossible to pass through using normal methods. All of a sudden, Su Yu caught a glimpse of an unusual existence. Looking over, he could faintly see a blurry figure hiding in the corner. Yu Xiangwan followed his gaze and said, "It's Hall Master Miaoxiang from the exchange hall. It looks like she is not with the enemy, probably acting according to the situation." Su Yu's gaze flickered. Hall Master Miaoxiang, sorry. As he spoke, he secretly activated the space domain. The hidden hall master Miaoxiang was suddenly teleported to the entrance, and her concealment was forcefully removed by Su Yu. She was confused at first. Soon after, a group of hall masters, who were lying in ambush nearby, came out one after another. Hall Master Miaoxiang was so frightened that she screamed and ran for her life. She was confused. What was going on? Why would she suddenly appear in front of people without rhyme or reason? Many hall masters were chasing after her. Most of them had a higher cultivation level than her, so she had nowhere to run. Just as despair rose in her heart, another spatial domain appeared around her and swept her away, bringing her to a safe place with few people. The hall master of the wonderful fragrance hall was still in a state of shock. She hurriedly hid herself again and cursed in anger. Which bastard did this? She wanted to cry but had no tears. She was perfectly fine, yet she was being hunted down. Little did she know that the moment she lured the enemy away. Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan seized the opportunity and dashed toward the entrance of the domain. However, those hall masters were clearly not to be trifled with. They immediately rushed over upon sensing it. Before he arrived, all kinds of attacks had already arrived. Su Yu's expression turned cold. He still needed some time to enter the domain. Brother Su, do you still have the tortoise shell that I gave you? Yu Xiangwan suddenly asked. Turtle shell? What did Yu Xiangwan want this thing for? However, Su Yu would not discard something that Yu Xiangwan had given him. He nodded and said, It's here. He immediately took out the tortoise shell and returned it to Yu Xiangwan. The latter smiled and said, I might have to embarrass myself in front of Brother Su. As she spoke, Yu Xiangwan threw the tortoise shell into the air. Then, she entered it and turned into a tortoise. My original form is a tortoise, Yu Xiangwan said sheepishly. Su Yu did not laugh, but he was moved. The tortoise shell should be the most important thing to a tortoise, right? However, Yu Xiangwan actually gave it to him as a protective treasure and had been using it until today. You go in first. Yu Xiangwan, who had turned into a tortoise again, was very confident in her defense. Su Yu pondered for a moment. Yu Xiangwan was not someone who did not know when to advance or retreat. Since she had made such an arrangement, she must have been confident. Without another word, he plunged into the domain of the faction master. At the same time, an earth-shattering attack came. Yu Xiangwan was not afraid. At the moment the attack came, her limbs and head shrank into the tortoise shell. Only the tortoise shell was left spinning on the outside. All the attacks that hit the tortoise shell bounced back without exception. With him blocking the attacks, Su Yu finally succeeded in activating the domain and pulled Yu Xiangwan's tortoise shell into it. Seeing this, the Division of Affairs Master's expression was extremely gloomy. The mine is not ready yet, we can't let them inform the faction master. The Division of Affairs Master made up his mind and took the risk to rush into the faction master's domain. If the faction master did not deliberately investigate, he might not have discovered that there was a pursuit happening in his domain, right? The group of division masters behind him clenched their teeth. Now that things had come to this group of traitors had no way out. Charge! They quickly rushed into the domain, chasing after Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan. Su Yu's expression was slightly stern. There were many people at the scene, and under the eyes of the faction master, Su Yu did not dare to use the space domain. He could only try his best to escape. Along the way, he counterattacked from time to time, creating a huge commotion. He hoped to alert the faction master. Brother Su, hold on to me, Yu Xiangwan said immediately when she saw that the enemies were about to catch up. Su Yu tightened his grip on Yu Xiangwan's tortoise shell. Yu Xiangwan immediately spun her body. The tortoise shell immediately spun at an extremely high speed, creating a huge whirlwind that swept her and Su Yu away at high speed. That speed was close to the Nirvana realm later stage, leaving the division masters far behind. A moment later, Yu Xiangwan stopped. Su Yu felt dizzy. As the tortoise shell spun, Suyu was also being spun crazily. Even though his cultivation level was high, it was still a little hard to bear. But it had to be said that after Yu Xiangwan transformed into a tortoise man, his combat power had risen by several levels. In Su Yu's hands, the tortoise shell could only be used to escape by burrowing into the ground. But when he returned it to Yu Xiangwan, it could be said to be a divine artifact that had never failed him. Su Yu was a little doubtful that if he were to fight her head-on, his chances of winning would be more than 50%. After all, the combined attacks of so many people had not even left a trace on the tortoise shell. "We're here, Brother Su." Yu Xiangwan's face was slightly red, a little embarrassed. It was really embarrassing to transform into a tortoise man. It was too much of a contrast to his usual image. Su Yu let out a dry cough and looked at the center of the domain. There was a quiet thatched hut. That was where the sect leader usually rested. There was a powerful protective formation around the thatched cottage, which not only isolated the probing of the outside world, but also isolated his control of the outside world. No wonder the sect leader did not notice the commotion outside. "The faction master will only know if we break the spell by force." Yu Xiangwan asked Su Yu to step aside and used his turtle shell again. The turtle shell spun, and the end of its tail pierced the formation at an extremely high speed. With a loud boom, the array that the Earth Master had personally set up was actually cracked by Yu Xiangwan's tortoise shell. Su Yu took in a breath of cold air. If an expert were to be struck by this turtle shell, just thinking about it made Su Yu's scalp go numb. As the descendant of ancient god corpse ancestor, he was indeed not that simple. However, Su Yu's timing was quite accurate. The moment the crack appeared, Su Yu turned into a speck of dust and entered it. He then rushed into the thatched cottage. "Faction Master, something bad has happened." Su Yu pushed open the thatched hut. However, he stood there in a daze. There was no sect leader in the thatched cottage. There was only a skeleton that had been dead for an unknown period of time. The skeleton was covered in dust, but the bones were filled with a powerful Tao. It had been dead for eons, but the Tao still existed. An ordinary path master would not be able to do this. How could there be a skeleton in the sect leader's thatched cottage? Su Yu walked forward and tried to touch the corpse. However, a bolt of lightning shot out from the corpse and bounced Su Yu's hand away. At the same time, a strange text appeared on the corpse. Su Yu recognized it. It was a language of the heavenly insect clan. He read it word by word. When he was done, his heart could not help but beat wildly. "I am the founder of the Greater One sect. If anyone in the faction sees my corpse, please use your identity token to take away my heaven-destroying seal and kill the monster." Su Yu was shocked when he finished reading. Wasn't the founder of the Greater One sect the current faction master? If the skeleton in front of him was, then who was the current faction master? Could it be the monster that the skeleton had mentioned? Su Yu was confused. What was going on? Creak. Just as he was feeling bewildered, a hidden space suddenly appeared in front of the skeleton. There was a groove on it, just enough to fit the token. Su Yu thought for a moment and put his disciple's token in. The space split open with a crack. A shining fiery red jade seal appeared in front of him. The seal contained the powerful might of a path master. It was even more powerful than the female corpse. Su Yu felt his heart skip a beat when he looked at it. Then, a string of words appeared above the skeleton. "Whoever obtains my heaven-destroying seal needs to kill the monster. But remember, every activation of the heaven-destroying seal consumes 10 million time crystals. Use it with caution." Su Yu sucked in a breath of cold air. 10 million time crystals? Who could afford it? Even though Su Yu was now rich, he really could not afford to use this heaven-destroying seal. But since a treasure had appeared, Su Yu would not stand on ceremony. He took it. When he took the treasure, a small bag of money fell from the skeleton's sleeve. Su Yu picked it up, opened it, and was overjoyed. There were exactly 10 million time crystals in it. It seemed that this skeleton was most likely the current faction master. But for some reason, he had been assassinated. Before he died, he left behind some means and 10,000 time crystals, waiting for someone who met the requirements to come and take away the heaven-destroying seal, and to kill the monster who had killed him. The current faction master is a monster? Suyu pondered. In his memory, the faction master's breath was not strange. He did not look like a monster. But there was another problem. If the faction master was not in the faction master's domain, then where was he? Chapter 2544. He walked out of the hut and told Yu Xiangwan what he had seen. The latter was equally dumbfounded. Dead. I remember that the faction master had a heaven-destroying seal, but I haven't seen him use it for hundreds of millions of years. Now that I think about it, the real faction master was killed a long time ago. A fake faction master replaced the faction master and deceived the Greater One sect for hundreds of millions of years. Suyu was amused. This was unprecedented in the history of the Greater One sect. Not only had all the higher-ups in the faction betrayed them, but even the faction master had been killed and replaced with a fake faction master who had deceived everyone for so long. Don't laugh, what should we do now? Those guys are about to catch up with us, Yu Xiangwan urged. Suyu pondered. You come in too. There should be no place safer than the hut in the entire Greater One sect. As he said that, he used the space domain to turn Yu Xiangwan into a speck of dust and pulled her into the hut. The two of them hid in the thatched hut and observed the situation outside without batting an eyelid. Soon, the food hall master and the others arrived. But they were 100 million miles away from the hut and did not dare to advance further. They were afraid of being discovered by the faction master. What should we do? The affairs hall master's eyes darkened and he shouted, Go! Go out and inform the people in the mine that the faction master already knows. They must have seen the faction master since they had been separated from Suyu and the others for such a long time. It would be useless to continue lying in ambush. As such, they retreated like the tide and no longer waited outside the domain. Suyu and Yu Xiangwan waited for a moment to confirm that they had really left before they quietly left the hut and went outside the domain. Compared to before, the major areas of the faction were much quieter. This could only mean one thing. The battle had subsided. It was unknown whether the faction had the upper hand or the group of traitors had the upper hand. Search there, kill anyone you see alive. Not far away there was a fierce shout. Suyu and Yu Xiangwan looked at each other, thinking that they were unlucky. It seemed that the traitors had taken control of the faction. The people in the sects were either killed or abandoned the sects and fled. Suyu used his transparent eye to observe and found that there were many of them, far more than Suyu and Yu Xiangwan could handle. Let's go. There were already so many traitors here, not to mention the faction's exit. It would be even more difficult to charge out. They had no choice but to head deeper into the sect. All of a sudden, Suyu passed by a familiar area, and his heart skipped a beat. Follow me. Suyu brought Yu Xiangwan to the entrance of a sealed mine. Yu Xiangwan was surprised. An abandoned mine? There were 2 mines in the Greater One sect. One of them was currently being excavated, and the other had been abandoned after digging out the Netherworld realm. Last time, Suyu was targeted by Qin Yuan, the deputy clan master, and was forced to enter an abandoned mine. As a result, he accidentally provoked a monster of the Netherworld realm and was almost burned to death by the Netherworld green flames. But this time, Suyu took the initiative to bring Yu Xiangwan here. Brother Su, I heard that it's quite dangerous inside. It's already connected to the Netherworld realm. If we're not careful, we might fall into the Netherworld. Yu Xiangwan said worriedly. Suyu calmly said, in the whole faction, besides the thatched cottage, this place should be the safest place. The thatched hut was only temporarily safe. Once the traitor took complete control of the situation, he would soon discover that the sect master had yet to appear. At that time, he would definitely head to the thatched hut to investigate. At that time, the thatched cottage was the most dangerous place. On the contrary, it was an abandoned mine. Because it was filled with danger, the traitor would not dare to come down for the time being, and it would appear to be safer. The two of them immediately entered the mine. But just as they entered, an obscure attack came toward them. Suyu did not even think about it as he struck back with his hand. A dull groan could be heard. Looking over, it was Hall Master Miaoxiang. "Didn't you leave?" Suyu blurted out. Hall Master Miaoxiang was stunned. "You're Suyu?" Hall Master Miaoxiang still had some impression of Suyu, who had sold her an entire divine herb. But then she regained her senses. "Wait, how did you know I left?" She stared at Suyu with a burning gaze and suddenly understood. "Could it be that you're the bastard who secretly moved me in front of the traitor?" Suyu felt guilty, but he still wore an innocent expression. Cough, cough, what are you talking about? I don't understand at all. Stop pretending. Hall Master Miaoxiang glared fiercely at Suyu. He actually dared to make use of her. How hateful! Yu Xiangwan looked at the two of them, her face drooping. "Both of you, even if you're flirting, please find another place, okay?" "You're the flirting," Suyu and Hall Master Miaoxiang said in unison. But they did stop quarreling. "You've sacrificed me. You've finally seen the faction master, right?" Hall Master Miaoxiang had a look of anticipation. Suyu shook his head regretfully. "The faction master is not in the realm." Hall Master Miaoxiang's expression sank, but she was not too surprised. The faction was in such a mess, but the faction master had not noticed it at all. There was something unusual about this. "All right, since you've also escaped here, it looks like the outside has already been completely controlled by the traitor." Hall Master Miaoxiang smiled bitterly. When Suyu had transported her away, she had tried to rush out of the faction. But it was a pity that the exit had already been completely controlled by the traitor. If she tried to force her way out, she would only be sending herself to death. So she had chosen to retreat and escape into the abandoned mine. Now, the three of them were in the same boat. "Go deeper." Suyu's eyes flashed. Hall Master Miaoxiang did not object. It was too dangerous to stay at the exit. But there was an indescribable danger in the depth. She did not dare to go deeper alone, so she chose to stay at the exit, in case she could escape immediately. Now that she had Suyu and Xiangwan as companions, she could explore deeper. "Brother Su, you seem to have a destination?" Suyu nodded slightly. "You could say so." Under his lead, the three of them groped their way forward in the pitch-black darkness. Soon, Suyu stopped in front of a giant 9-abyss crystal stone wall. The stone wall looked very ordinary, with nothing special about it. Just as Yu Xiangwan was about to ask, a light sound came from within the stone wall. It was as if a hoe was digging into the ground. "Hide!" Suyu shouted. The three of them immediately used their abilities and hid carefully, observing the wall in silence. After an unknown period of time, the sound of digging got closer. A piece of stone suddenly loosened and fell down. A figure emerged from it. It was none other than the person Suyu had paid attention to many times. Lao Jin. It was the dark-skinned Lao Jin who was very friendly to the newcomers. At this moment, his temperament had changed greatly. He was no longer the simple and honest person he used to be. His eyes were exceptionally sharp, and he had the faint aura of a middle nirvana warrior. He held a special hoe in his hand and successfully dug a hole in the wall. A smile appeared on his exhausted face. "It's done, I didn't disappoint you." Lao Jin was the first to jump over, followed by a large group of slaves and some supervisors. Suyu recognized one of the supervisors. It was the boorish man. At the same time, a hall master clad in golden armor also emerged with a large group of slaves. "It was not easy, but we finally broke through." Lao Jin smiled in relief. "Let's go, follow the instructions from above and immediately set up the spell." They walked all the way to the end of the mine, to the small hole that had been punched through. A gloomy green light was continuously emitted from the other end of the hole, illuminating the depths of the mine. This is the 9 Abyss world that was dug out back then. Lao Jin swallowed hard, his face still showing some lingering fear. Back then, he had been a slave in this abandoned mine. At that time, he had just entered the mine and was still quite close to the exit. Hence, when the 9 Abyss world was dug through and the 9 nether-green flames swept over, he was the first to escape. He had watched as a large number of his fellow slaves died tragically under the 9 nether-green flames. Many years had passed, but Lao Jin still remembered it clearly. Let's do it, drain the 9 netherworld dry, and everything inside will be ours. Lao Jin suppressed the fear in his heart and took out a large pile of high-grade materials. With the help of him and all the slaves, he started to set up a super spell. Yu Xiangwan laughed coldly in the dark. I knew that Lao Jin was not a good person back then. He contacted the newcomers one by one to see if he could convince them to join the betrayal. Su Yu agreed. Lao Jin had also looked for him back then, but perhaps because of his vigilance, Lao Jin felt that it was not easy to convince him, so he gave up and never looked for him again. As for the rest of the slaves, they had all been convinced. Even the boorish supervisor had degenerated to join them and become one of them. I wonder what they want to do. Drain the 9 netherworld dry? How dare they even think about it? Yu Xiangwan pondered. Su Yu did not speak. He did not believe that the 9 netherworld really existed. It was just a place of legends, just like the hell that mortals talked about. It existed only in legends, not in reality. Su Yu had reservations about saying that they could drain the 9 netherworld dry. However, there was one thing that Su Yu did not dare to agree with. That was, after draining the 9 netherworld, everything inside would be theirs. Based on Su Yu's experience, that was just wishful thinking. Back then, he had gone to the netherworld realm to explore a bit, but he ended up startling some unknown entity that chased after him and almost killed him. He did not know what that entity was, but it must have been very terrifying. If they had barged in without any mental preparation, what awaited them would have been a disaster. Su Yu and the other two waited silently. 1 day passed. 10 days passed. 1 month passed. 1 year passed. Apart from the Miaoxiang clan master, who was getting impatient, Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan were completely calm and not anxious. On this day, Lao Jin and the others burst into laughter. The multicolored ancient spell is finally complete. A rectangular spell was placed near the empty space. The Golden Armor Clan Master laughed. Master's plan can finally be implemented. Chapter 2545. Meanwhile, in another mine, the head steward, the deputy steward, and a group of slaves were setting up one complicated array after another in the entire mine. Every single one of them was a formation filled with spatial energy. There were more than 100,000 of them. When the head steward received the news, he was delighted. The multicolored ancient array is a success. Let's retreat to the other side of the ancient cave. The deputy steward nodded. Before we leave, check the entrance and exit of the mine one last time to see if it's sealed tightly and if all the arrays are activated. After making sure that everything was in order, they followed the cave that old Jean and the others had dug and arrived at the abandoned mine. The group finally met up. Head steward, we can start now. The deputy steward's eyes were filled with anticipation and excitement. After waiting for so many years, we can finally start. The head steward looked hesitant as he asked the traitor army that came down from the top of the abandoned mine. Did you really search the sect leader's territory? Is there no one in his thatched hut? The head steward asked. The hall master of the Hall of Affairs was certain. We tried our best to break the array around the thatched hut, but there was nothing inside. That was because all the skeletons inside had been taken away by Yu Xiangwan. Naturally, there would be nothing inside. The deputy steward's eyes glinted. All these years, I can't tell what that old thing sect leader is thinking about. Such a big thing happened in the sect, and he actually did not show up? If he did not know about it when the rebellion happened, then so be it. But a year had passed. Was he blind? How could he not know about it? But he did not show up, and it made them feel uneasy. The head steward stroked his beard. We've spent so much time and took such a huge risk to finally reach the last step. No matter where that old thing is, there's no reason to stop. The deputy steward nodded. The plan that they had been planning for hundreds of years was finally about to begin. The head steward and the deputy steward walked to the multicolored ancient array together. With their powerful profound path energy, they successfully activated the multicolored ancient array. Puff, puff, the entire ancient array started to emit a loud sound. A series of rotating ripples were emitted from the ancient formation. The ripples then evolved into a powerful suction force. Suddenly, a wisp of 9 nether emerald flame was drawn back from the other end of the hole, hovering above the colorful ancient formation. Seeing that, the great steward and the rest of the people retreated frantically. They only stopped when they reached where Su Yu and the others were. At this moment, the second wisp of 9 secluded azure flame was drawn out, followed by the third, the fourth. Finally, a large mass of 9 serenities emerald flame appeared above the colorful ancient formation. Once such a large amount of 9 serenities jade flame went out of control and burned the entire abandoned mine, all of them would be doomed. Fortunately, the strength of the multicolored ancient formation was strong, and it firmly controlled the restless ball of 9 hell jade flame. Moreover, it was slowly and steadily transmitted to the previously excavated cave, arriving at another mine. Countless teleportation portals in the other mine had already been activated. The moment the 9 secret emerald flame entered the mine, it was immediately teleported away by the tens of thousands of teleportation arrays. Outside the Greater One Gate, not far away, a deer was leisurely drinking water by the river. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the space above its head, and a wisp of 9 serenities emerald flame fell from it without warning, instantly killing the deer on the spot, causing its soul to scatter and scatter. The same scene, with the Greater One Gate as the center, continued to play out. In the abandoned mine, wisp after wisp of 9 serenities emerald flame, just like before, was drawn out in an unending stream, and then transmitted to another mine through the colorful ancient formation. Then, the 9 serenities emerald flame was transmitted to the outside of the sect through the teleportation array in the other mine. In this way, as long as they persevered, there was no need to worry about the 9 serenities emerald flame in the netherworld realm. 1 month passed. Sure enough, the emerald light emitted by the netherworld realm had clearly become dimmer. 3 months passed, and the emerald light had become much dimmer. When half a year passed, the emerald light was so weak that it could no longer be seen. Yu Xiangwan secretly took a breath. They really dared to think that they actually succeeded. Hall Master Miaoxiang was also incomparably shocked. The netherworld realm had actually been sucked dry? Of course, the price they had to pay was that all living beings in the Greater One Gate were plunged into misery and suffering. All living beings were killed by the 9 serenities emerald flame, which appeared at any time and place. Many people who were lucky enough to escape from the Greater One Gate were brutally killed by the 9 serenities emerald flame because they didn't leave the range of the Greater One Gate in time. The whole Greater One Gate was reduced to a land of absolute death. 1 year later, the colorful ancient formation was no longer able to draw out even a wisp of 9 serenities emerald flame from the other end of the hole. Only then did the head manager and the second manager gradually stop pouring profound energy into the colorful ancient formation. After a whole year and a half, they had been continuously pouring profound energy into the formation. One could well imagine how much energy they had consumed. The two of them sat cross-legged, extremely weak, and tried to recover the profound energy they had consumed. "You guys send a group of slaves to the netherworld realm to scout," the head manager ordered the golden-armored hall master. A ruthless glint flashed through the eyes of the golden-armored hall master. After all, the Netherworld realm was full of unknowns. The two managers and the middle-level members of the sect naturally didn't want to put themselves in danger. The slaves who had surrendered to them were the best stones to ask for guidance. You, and the rest of you, go down immediately. The golden-armored hall master selected 10 people, and hung a projection treasure on each of them. After they entered, the projection magic treasure would project everything they saw to this place. Only after confirming that it was safe would they choose to go in. The 10 slaves were angry, but didn't dare to say anything. They could only brace themselves and enter the Netherworld realm. Su Yu, Yu Xiangwan, and the others secretly held their breaths, their eyes filled with curiosity. The legendary Netherworld realm was finally going to reveal itself. Time passed bit by bit. Not long after the group of people entered the Netherworld realm, an image was transmitted. In their imagination, the Netherworld realm should be a vicious, hellish place. However, the image that was projected in front of them caused everyone to gasp in surprise. In the image, there were countless cities on an incomparably spacious plain. Those cities were well preserved, and there wasn't even the slightest bit of damage. It was as if there were people living in them. However, there was nothing in the city. There wasn't a single living thing in it. There was only the howling of the wind on the plain. At the same time, the plain was full of emerald-green crystals that were emitting a dazzling radiance. Look, a 4th-grade Netherworld crystal. Suddenly, a surprised voice rang out. It turned out that the 10 slaves had found a huge 4th-grade Netherworld crystal that was casually embedded in the ground. According to preliminary estimates, it was at least 500 kilograms. Just this Netherworld crystal alone was worth at least 320,000 time crystals. In the mine, everyone who had witnessed everything was breathing rapidly, their eyes red. The chief manager couldn't help but lick his lips as he recovered. It was too shocking. A 4th-grade Netherworld crystal was casually placed on the side of the road, and this was only the edge of the Netherworld realm. If they went deeper, there would surely be even more shocking things. Soon after, the 10 people entered the city. However, what made them feel strange, and they didn't dare to enter again, was that in this deathly silent city, there was smoke rising in spirals. In some of the houses of the residents there was still firewood burning. The pot was steaming, and the fragrance of rice assailed their nostrils. In the restaurant, the food on the table was still hot, and so was the wine. Even the feces of the cows on the side of the road were still emitting steam. However, there wasn't a single person, not a single living thing. It was as if all living beings had mysteriously disappeared without a trace just a moment ago. As a martial artist, and a powerhouse of the Path Master level at that, no one should believe in ghosts. Ghosts were also a type of living thing. But at this time, everyone, including the people in the mine, felt their hair stand on end. Is it possible that this place is really the Netherworld realm? A world of the dead? The second manager's mind trembled, and he felt an indescribable fear. Everything before their eyes was too unimaginable, and they couldn't explain it. The 10 slaves didn't dare to enter the city again, and their scalps went numb as they retreated, heading toward another city. The result was the same. Everything in the city remained the same as before, as if there were people living, eating, and walking around just now. After several cities were like this, the 10 slaves finally couldn't bear the strange world any longer, and they all ran back. Fortunately, although they didn't enter the city, they could casually pick up the Netherworld crystals on the side of the road. 4th, 5th, and 6th stage Netherworld crystals were extremely rare in the outside world. But in the Netherworld realm, they could be casually picked up like stones on the ground. The 10 of them brought back a whole 5,000 kilograms of Netherworld crystals, and they didn't even look for them on purpose, they were just picking them up along the way. If they were to look for them seriously, the number of Netherworld crystals they could find would be astronomical. At this time, everyone was excited. Although the Netherworld realm was strange and frightening, the 10 slaves were enough to prove that it wasn't dangerous. The main manager and the second manager were in high spirits, and didn't hesitate to swallow the medicinal pills they had prepared beforehand to replenish their profound energy. Hopefully, they would recover soon. The traders were also eager to get into action. Once the two managers recovered, they would step into the unimaginably rich netherworld realm and excavate the wealth that they would never be able to use in their entire life. But just as everyone was waiting, the sound of calm footsteps echoed from the entrance of the abandoned mine. The golden-armored hall leader casually looked behind him, and immediately stiffened, unable to move. "Golden armor, why are you so suspicious? Don't scare me." Old Jean frowned, dissatisfied. He still hadn't recovered from the strange netherworld realm, and he couldn't be scared. But when he saw that the golden armor wasn't reacting, he couldn't help but curiously look behind him. But when he looked back, old Jean also stiffened, unable to move. Tap, tap, the footsteps were very slow, but very powerful, and they were getting clearer and clearer in everyone's minds. Yes, they weren't getting clearer and clearer. Instead, they were echoing in their minds. Everyone felt that there was something wrong and looked behind them. But when they looked back, they all stiffened, unable to move. Chapter 2546. The head steward and the second steward were shocked. They opened their eyes abruptly and looked behind them. However, they were also frozen, motionless. Everyone in the mine was frozen in that instant. The air was terrifyingly silent and also terrifyingly silent. Yu Xiangwan and Hall Master Miaoxiang, who were hiding in the dark, couldn't help but look behind them. Su Yu immediately pressed Yu Xiangwan's head to prevent her from looking back. As for Hall Master Miaoxiang, because Yu Xiangwan was between them, he couldn't stop her in time. In the end, she looked back and couldn't move anymore. Yu Xiangwan was shocked, cold sweat trickling down his forehead. That was close. He almost fell for it too. Thud thud, however, the footsteps were getting closer, as if it was ringing in their ears. However, Yu Xiangwan didn't dare to move. He was afraid that the slightest movement would expose him and be discovered by the terrifying existence behind them. Even the head steward and the second steward, as well as the countless strong martial artists in the mine. They didn't even have the slightest bit of struggle. The moment they turned around, they couldn't move at all. Not to mention him? Drops of cold sweat flowed down his cheeks and gathered into droplets, dripping down his neck. Thud thud. Finally, the footsteps arrived beside them and paused for a moment. However, neither Yu Xiangwan nor Su Yu dared to turn their heads to look. At that moment, they felt as if there were countless mountains pressing down on them, suffocating them. Fortunately, the next moment, the footsteps moved forward. A stooped figure finally appeared. The faction master. That was the sect leader who had gone missing. However, he was different from the faction master they had seen in the past. At that moment, his entire body was flowing with a layer of gray light like lime. On his body, there were squirming eyes moving up and down his body, as if searching for anything that could move. There was a dangerous glint in those eyes. Su Yu didn't look at him, but he could feel that there was something hidden in those eyes. Petrification domain. And it was a high-level petrification domain. Once they looked at each other, they would immediately be petrified. This was also the reason why everyone present was petrified in that instant. Su Yu finally understood why the faction master called him a monster. Because he was indeed not an ordinary creature. Sigh. Ancient God domain of the Nine Nether, we meet again. The sect leader stared at the remnant image in the air, and sighed with a complicated expression. When Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan heard this, their hearts were in turmoil. The so-called Nine Nether realm was actually the ancient God domain of the Nine Nether? In the ancient God realm, Su Yu was most touched. It was because he was born in the ancient Nine Dragons God domain. Therefore, he had always been very curious about the ancient God regions of the other ancient gods. He had never imagined that the Netherworld realm that everyone feared was actually ancient God Netherworld's ancient God realm. Years ago, you died a miserable death at the hands of the 8 sovereigns, and I was powerless to do anything about it. Now, I am powerless to stop them from emptying out your ancient god realm." The sect leader sighed deeply. In the end, the sovereigns won the battle between the ancient gods and the sovereigns. As the sect leader sighed, he revealed many great secrets of the world that no one knew about. It won't be long before the ancient god realm of the 9 Nether will become like the ancient god realm of the 9 Nether. It will be hollowed out and become an empty shell, won't it? The sect master sighed. Hearing this, Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. The ancient 9 dragons god domain was once excavated just like the ancient 9 Nether god domain? The question that had existed in his heart for hundreds of years was finally answered. He had always wondered why the ancient god 9 dragons, as an ancient god of the generation, had such a small divine realm. It was even smaller than a small constellation C. It turned out that it had been completely excavated by someone, leaving only some remains that had been snatched by the greedy Tao Tai. During the struggle, Tao Tai had been wounded by one of the sovereigns, so it fled to the outer region where Su Yu was and fell into a deep sleep. If the two of you are like this, how much better can the other ancient gods be? Except for those few ancient gods who were lucky enough to escape and hide, the divine realms of the other ancient gods are all being excavated by the sovereigns, right? It turned out that the ancient gods of the 9 Nether and 9 Nether were not the only ones in the same situation. There were other ancient gods who might have met with misfortune or gone missing. Their ancient god realms were being excavated by the sovereigns. The Time Sovereign was responsible for excavating the ancient god realms of the 9 Nether ancient god. So, the other sovereigns should be responsible for excavating the divine realms of the other ancient gods. Su Yu's mind suddenly became clear. He finally had a general understanding of the unknown 8-star civilization. In the past, the 8-star civilization was a world ruled by the ancient gods. It was divided into 8 great ancient god realms. However, the 8 great ancient gods disappeared or fell one after another. Their divine realms were occupied by the sovereigns, who destroyed and excavated wantonly. Before you died, you crystallized the entire ancient god realm with the power of the heavenly law of the 9 Nether. Even time was frozen. Unfortunately, you still couldn't escape their excavation for 10,000 years. Were all the crystals created by the power of the heavenly law of the 9 Nether? Using thick 9 Nether crystals to freeze the ancient god realm to prevent the sovereigns from excavating it. Unfortunately, it was still excavated in the end. The 9 Nether world excavated by the Greater One sect was just the tip of the iceberg of the 9 Nether divine realm. The entire dream-interrupted realm, no, the entire underground controlled by the Time Sovereigns was the ancient god realm of the 9 Nether. It was just covered by a thick layer of 9 Nether crystals, as well as mountains and rivers. Sigh, the situation is hopeless. I'm leaving. The faction master let out a long sigh. His body melted into a puddle of muddy water and disappeared into the depths of the ground. After a long time, Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan dared to speak. "Brother Su, what was that?" Yu Xiangwan's eyes were filled with shock. What shocked him was not only the other party's petrification domain, but also the ancient secrets he spoke of. As it turned out, the so-called Netherworld realm was ancient god Netherworld's ancient god realm. These 9 darkness crystals were used by the ancient god of 9 darkness to protect the ancient god realm of 9 darkness. Now that he thought about it, the foreign object in the 9 Nether odd crystal was most likely something that was accidentally sealed by the power of the 9 Nether heavenly way. But why did everything within the city of the ancient god domain of the 9 Nether remain in the same state as before? Because even time had been frozen in the ancient god domain of the 9 Nether. Su Yu said leisurely, "How do you guess the figures from the era of the 8 great ancient gods?" The people of that era were too distant, too mysterious, and there was no way to guess. As the two of them spoke, a light cracking sound came from Hall Master Wonderful Fragrance's body. A layer of lime was peeling off her body. Not good. However, Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan gasped at the same time. If the petrification on Hall Master Miao Xiang's body began to fade, then the petrification on Great Steward and Second Steward's bodies would also begin to fade. Let's go. Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan carried Hall Master Miao Xiang. Behind him was the exit of the mine, and he could return to the surface as quickly as possible. However, the surface had already been occupied by the rebel army. Enter the ancient god domain of the Nine Nether. Su Yu bellowed. The three of them sped toward the opening. By the time they passed by the Great Steward, the petrification on his body had mostly faded. His body slowly emitted a majestic, mysterious path energy. Without thinking, Su Yu casually used the space domain to temporarily seal him inside. Then, when they passed by the Second Steward, Yu Xiangwan's eyes flashed with a ruthless glint. Blue flames spewed from her eyes, burning the Second Steward. That was not all. He used his own turtle shell to spin and strike her hard. With a cracking sound, the Second Steward's body was almost torn in half by the turtle shell. It looked like he was about to die. The petrification on the Second Steward's body was finally completely lifted. She raised her arm in time to block the spinning turtle shell. Yu Xiangwan had no choice but to stop and flee toward the ancient god domain of the Nine Nether. "I'll destroy you," the Second Steward growled in a low voice. He endured the intense pain and chased after her madly. Yu Xiangwan was not afraid. She turned around and said coldly, "Old woman, this is revenge for the day you hunted me down." Before the rebellion, Yu Xiangwan had been chased miserably by the Second Steward. Now, she was just asking for a little interest. "You're courting death." The Second Steward charged in anger, but because he was seriously injured and had not recovered from the previous battle. Hence, he had the will but not the strength. The Great Steward also recovered his petrification. Without a second thought, he charged toward Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan. But there was a space domain in front of him, sealing him inside. He was like a fly in a bottle, unable to break free no matter what. The Second Steward had no choice but to return and cooperate with the Great Steward to finally break the seal of the space domain. "Let's recover first, then chase after them." The two of them sat cross-legged. They had painstakingly discovered the ancient god domain of the Nine Nether. How could they allow outsiders to get there first? If that was the case, they would not be able to answer to that lord. 2 hours later, the Great Steward and Second Steward recovered, and the rest of the rebel army recovered one after another. Second Steward, chase after them personally. I'll lead the rest and do our best to excavate the ancient god domain of the Nine Nether. Compared to the endless wealth inside, chasing after Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan was insignificant. All right. The Second Steward immediately agreed. A faint light flickered in his eyes. The ancient god domain of the Nine Nether. Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan had no idea where to go. They only knew to run away in a daze. "There, father, there." Suddenly, the baby crawled out and pointed to the southwest excitedly. "Brother Su, what does he mean?" Yu Xiangwan was startled. Could it be that the baby knew this place? Su Yu pondered and said slowly, "Do you remember when we were imprisoned in the heavenly prison, he was this excited?" At that time, the baby kept knocking on the wall, trying to get to the side of the abandoned mine. At that time, he had sensed something very important. "Let's go take a look." The baby pointed in a direction, and Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan hurried over. Along the way, they saw many Nine Nether crystals scattered on the ground. There were even 5th grade Nine Nether crystals among them. However, they did not dare to stop and went straight to the place the baby had pointed. A whole month later, after a long journey, they finally arrived at the place the baby had sensed. It was an ancient altar. On the altar, the torches were still burning brightly. This meant that a sacrifice had been held there. In the middle of the altar, there was a transparent book on a stone table. Did the baby come for the book? Su Yu was slightly surprised. Yu Xiangwan looked around and asked in surprise, "What book? Where is it?" Su Yu pointed to the stone table. "Can't you see it? The book should be very conspicuous. Is there something on it?" Yu Xiangwan walked over and touched the stone table with her palm. Chapter 2547. Su Yu was surprised. He walked over and flipped open the seemingly transparent book with a gentle flip. It turned out to be the words of the heavenly book. Moreover, Su Yu knew all of them. The baby pointed at the book, his face full of excitement, as if urging something anxiously. Su Yu was slightly suspicious. "You want me to complete the interrupted sacrifice?" The baby nodded vigorously. He thought for a moment, nodded slightly, came to the stone table, and began to recite the words of the heavenly book. As soon as he recited a paragraph, a shocking scene appeared. The altar was originally in the depths of the empty field, but at this moment it suddenly trembled. It was as if something was constantly emerging from the ground. And as Su Yu continued to recite, the movement became louder and louder. In the blink of an eye, the ground was shaking. The whole altar was like a small boat in a storm, about to capsize at any time. At the same time, a terrifying aura surged out from the depths of the ground. Deep in this aura, Su Yu had an illusion that he was about to be destroyed. What kind of ritual is this? When Su Yu was halfway through his recitation, the 9 netherworld in his sight began to undergo shocking changes. The world kept shaking, and inexplicable screams kept coming from afar. Wisps of emerald light surged from the depths of the 9 netherworld again. 9 nether emerald fire? Yu Xiangwan's scalp went numb. Wasn't this part of the 9 nether ancient god realm already emptied? How could there still be more? By the time he recited the last part, the altar had been pushed up into the sky by something that had drilled out from the ground. Standing high above and looking down, Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan were horrified to find out. The cracks on the ground crisscrossed and weaved into an enormous black phoenix pattern. The place where they were standing happened to be the eyes of the phoenix, the original body of the 9 nether ancient god. Su Yu gasped. What kind of ritual is this? He looked at the last paragraph of the heavenly book and recited it in one go. Suddenly, a sharp cry came from the depths of the ground. Endless emerald flames rose from the depths of the ground, igniting the entire phoenix pattern into a pale green color. The flames continued to spread towards the altar, and in the blink of an eye they reached the altar. It looked like they were about to be devoured. The baby suddenly leaped into the boundless dark green flames. Those jade-green flames seemed to have found a new master, and they all drilled into the infant's body. The baby, on the other hand, enjoyed this process with great joy. It screamed excitedly as it landed on the ground. The instant his feet touched the ground, the entire phoenix pattern began to move strangely. It was as if the phoenix was flapping its wings and was about to fly away. At the same time, loud and clear Sanskrit sounds suddenly resounded throughout the world. As the Sanskrit chants fell, the infant closed his eyes in a daze and fell into a deep sleep within the pattern. After falling into a deep slumber, his body began to show obvious changes. First, his body that was about a year old slowly grew. The few heavenly book characters on his body flickered and flickered. An aura that had been dormant for a long time emanated from his body. It was as if something that had been sealed in his body for a long time had finally awakened. The baby had obviously entered the most critical moment for him. "You're such a mysterious baby." Yu Xiangwan was amazed. "Wasn't that right?" Su Yu could not see through it at all. "Let's just wait. It seems like it won't take long," Su Yu said slowly. Time ticked by. The azure flame of the 9 nether was gradually absorbed until not a trace was left. The baby had already grown into a 13 or 14-year-old youth. His brows were relaxed, and there was a faint aura of a king flowing around his body. It seemed like the evolution was about to be completed. However, at that moment, Su Yu's eyelids suddenly twitched. Without thinking, he unleashed a space domain and protected the baby within it. Bang! Almost at that moment, a ghostly palm print suddenly struck the space domain. The powerful attack shattered the space domain on the spot and slapped toward the baby's body. The baby was completely unaware of this and was about to take the hit. Block! Seeing the urgency of the situation, Yu Xiangwan immediately flew over and used her tortoise shell to block the latter's attack. That attack was a later stage Void Nirvana level attack. One could imagine its power. Even though Yu Xiangwan was protected by the tortoise shell, she was still hit by the palm and spat out blood. There was a hint of coldness at the corner of the second steward's mouth. Why did she attack the baby first? Because she knew that if she chased after those two, they would definitely run away. Only by attacking the baby first would they come to her. She raised her palm and slapped the second palm. This palm contained the space domain and the powerful later stage Void Nirvana cultivation. This palm strike might not be able to penetrate the tortoise shell, but it could definitely kill Yu Xiangwan, who was inside the tortoise shell. Yu Xiangwan sensed danger, but he did not dare to move his body away, much less leave with the baby. The baby was at the most crucial moment. He must not leave. He gritted his teeth and prepared to take the attack. However, at that moment, Yu Xiangwan suddenly realized that the time around him had actually stopped. His mind was still there, but his body could not move at all. Moreover, the second steward's fatal palm strike was also frozen. However, the second steward's cultivation was still much higher than Su Yu's. The effect of freezing time was limited. After being frozen for half a second, the palm still broke through the seal of the time domain and slammed down. However, Su Yu had already made sufficient preparations during this time. Scram! The lightning of the 8 extreme thunder controlling set shot out from his eyes and sent the second steward flying. The second steward's body floated and landed easily on the ground. Apart from some bloodstains on her body, there were no other injuries. The difference between Middle Nirvana and Void Nirvana was too great. Normal attacks could not do anything to her. The second steward landed elegantly, a hint of shock on his lips. You actually mastered the space domain and the time domain? Are you the illegitimate child of the time and space masters? That was the only explanation for why Su Yu possessed the domains of two great masters at the same time. None of your business, Su Yu said indifferently. The second steward patted the dust off his body, a faint smile on his face. Of course I have to care. No matter what, I am still under the command of Great Emperor Xiaohao. It is my duty as a subordinate to help him eliminate potential competitors for the master position in the future. A dark domain rapidly radiated out with the second steward as the center. The domain was filled with a thick aura of death. With just a touch, one's life would rapidly fade away. You should be content to die under my life-devouring domain. The second steward's eyes shone with a hint of excitement. Personally killing the illegitimate child of the time and space masters was a feeling he would never experience a second time in his life. Su Yu's gaze gradually turned cold. Without turning his head, he calmly said, "Brother Yu, step back." Yu Xiangwan suddenly felt a sense of trepidation, as if something that had been suppressed in Su Yu's body for a long time was awakening. A sliver of light. No, it was a sliver of colorful light that slowly appeared. The light had a total of 8 colors, and it slowly condensed under Su Yu's feet into an 8-petal lotus. This was the form of the 8 great domains at the middle level. 8 types of domains? The second steward's excitement suddenly froze, replaced by shock. A path master had to go through a great test to condense one type of domain, much less 8? Upon closer inspection, the second steward sucked in a breath of cold air. The 8 great supreme domains. Within that domain, there were not only the time domain and space domain, but also the life domain and the death domain. How is this possible? The second steward could not believe his eyes. After the ancient god Jiolong, there was actually someone who could comprehend the 8 great supreme domains? But the ancient god Jiolong had succeeded, to a large extent, because he had snatched the fortunes of the 8 great masters. That was how he had the opportunity to comprehend the 8 great supreme domains. Su Yu, a human, had actually succeeded? This was absolutely impossible. Time, space, life, death, soul, fate, reincarnation, creation. Su Yu's expression was cold as he stood atop the lotus, like a Brahma god. He recited the domains one after another. One of the petals under his feet was missing. This meant that his target, the second steward, was missing a domain. Once the 8 great domains were all stripped away, the second steward would be erased from time and cease to exist. When the time domain was stripped away, the second steward's body was immediately thrown into disarray. One moment she was an incomparably old woman, the next moment she was a child. It was as if she had fallen into the river of time. The second steward's expression changed drastically as she felt a strong sense of danger. Before her life domain was stripped away, the life-devouring domain on the surface of her body had abruptly strengthened. But her domain was only at the middle level, and so was Su Yu. The last thing she should have done was use domains to fight. With a puff, her life-devouring domain was destroyed on the spot. The second steward let out a miserable groan as blood flowed from her 7 orifices. It was as if a hole had appeared in her body, and she was constantly losing life force. Next was the stripping of the death domain, the soul domain, the reincarnation domain. When the 8 great domains were completely stripped away, because the second steward's cultivation base was exceptionally strong, she was not completely erased. But her body had become exceptionally disorderly. Sometimes it existed, and sometimes it did not. Her body was torn apart, and sometimes it was reassembled. In this state, it was a fate worse than death. The second steward screamed crazily, "I cannot die, I still have to serve Emperor Xiaohao, I cannot die." With a fierce roar, a strange time domain flowed out from the second steward's body. Su Yu's pupils shrank. That time domain belonged to Xiaohao. The time domain that flowed out was the time reversal domain, and its range was limited to the second steward's body. Su Yu's heart sank. Under his gaze, the second steward's body, which was on the verge of collapse, actually flowed back to the state she was in before her duel with Su Yu. In other words, she was unharmed. Once her body had recovered, the second steward immediately retreated, speeding into the distance. Her face revealed a look of lingering fear. This was the descendant of the strongest ancient god. Her 8 great domains were too nature-defying. But once she had escaped to a safe place, her lips curled into a sinister smile. "Su Yu, no one can save you now. If your identity as the ancient god's descendant is announced, the descendants of the 8 great masters will personally grind your bones to dust. There's nowhere for you to run." The current 8-star civilization was the world of the 8 great masters. Where could Su Yu escape to? But would Su Yu allow her to escape? Chapter 2548. Ancient God 9 Dragon was the ancient god that the 8 gods hated the most. Once his identity as Ancient God 9 Dragon was made known, the consequences could be easily imagined. Hence, Su Yu would not allow the second manager to escape at all costs. With a shake of his sleeve, a fiery red jade seal appeared in his palm. The large seal was swallowing and spitting out waves of flickering light, a sign that it had already been activated. It turned out that Su Yu knew that his cultivation was too low, and that he might not be able to kill the second steward with just the 8 great domains. Therefore, he held back and activated the Heaven Destroyer seal. Thus, a total of 10 million time crystals were consumed. The second steward, who was grinning hideously, caught a glimpse of this seal and his pupils constricted fiercely. Heaven-destroying seal? How did you get it? Wasn't that something that the sect leader hadn't used for hundreds of millions of years? Why did it appear in Su Yu's hands? What scared him the most was that the heaven-decimating seal had already been activated. A wave of cold air rushed from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Wait, stop. I can swear to the heavens that I will never leak the news of Ancient God 9 Dragon. The second steward's eyes widened, and his heart leapt into his throat. Chien Daelord's oath reached the heavens. Once a vow was made, it could not be violated. Compared to the heavenly law, I believe in myself more. Su Yu tossed the heaven-destroying seal into the sky. The heaven-decimating seal immediately released a fiery red light that blotted out the sky and covered everything within sight. The entire world was illuminated into a fiery red. It was as if there was an endless heavenly fire burning. No, I really didn't mean to target you. The second manager was so scared that he ran away. His face was full of fear and pleading. Unfortunately, the heaven-decimating seal would not stop just because of her pleas. There was a loud rumble. The fiery red light that filled the sky suddenly retracted. However, they were all absorbed into the second-in-charge's body. Terrified, he tried to force it out, but it was useless. All of the red light entered his body. Then, at a speed visible to the naked eye, the second steward was burnt to ashes from the inside out. A spatial storage device fell out of the dust. Su Yu swept through the air and obtained the storage artifact. At the same time, he withdrew the heaven-decimating seal, which had dimmed once again. Staring at the heaven-destroying seal, Su Yu felt his scalp go numb. The two deacons were almost at the Nirvana Void stage, but they couldn't resist the power of the heaven-slaying stamp. If this seal was used against him, just the thought of it made him shudder. Fortunately, he was the first to obtain the heaven-decimating seal. However, when he touched his empty pockets, Su Yu felt his heart ache. Although the heaven-destroying seal is powerful, its drawbacks are too obvious. Su Yu thought to himself. First, it was limited by the time crystal, a total of 10 million. This was an astronomical figure. The second was that activating it required an exceptionally long time. From the moment Xiang Wan made her move, Su Yu had been activating it. He had only succeeded at this moment. It had taken him at least the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. Half an incense stick's worth of time was more than enough for experts to fight several times. The next time he encountered a strong enemy, he might not have the chance to activate the heaven-decimating seal. However, it was fortunate that they managed to kill the second steward by surprise this time. He glanced at the sleeping baby on the ground. To be exact, he was already a 14-year-old boy. When the battle ended, the young man slowly opened his eyes. There was a hint of confusion, doubt, and incomprehension in his eyes. He looked up and surveyed his surroundings. When he saw Su Yu and Xiang Wan, his eyes were filled with unfamiliarity. "Who are you?" This question caused Su Yu's eyes to flicker. His expression was still calm. Because this was already within his expectations. Su Yu had only known him when he was a baby. How much of the baby's memories could he remember when he was a teenager? Perhaps only a few stars. "He's the father who picked you up and raised you," Xiang Wan said in astonishment. How could this be? The young man's brows creased slightly, his eyes filled with disgust. "I have roamed the god realm all my life, how could I have a father? You bullied me because I had just woken up from a deep sleep, right?" It turned out that not only had his memories been diluted, but a certain consciousness that had been sleeping in his body had also awakened. Xiang Wan felt injustice for Su Yu and snorted. "Deceive? How do you think you came out of the 9 Serenities crystal, and how did you change from a baby to what you are now?" He felt that it was not worth it. In order to allow the baby to safely complete his evolution, Su Yu did not hesitate to reveal his identity as the successor of the ancient god Jiulong. The risk he had taken was unimaginable. In the end, all he got in return was a question of, "Who are you?" Before this, Su Yu had all kinds of opportunities to throw the baby away and even sell it off, but in the end, he chose to treat it kindly. However, the scene today was too chilling. All he got in exchange for was a strange question from the baby. Su Yu waved his hand and said, "Forget it. My fate with him began with the 9 Serenities crystal and ended in the ancient god realm of 9 dragons. Maybe it was fate. To be honest, Suyu was slightly relieved. There were too many mysteries about the baby. Suyu couldn't guarantee that he would be able to make the baby grow up normally. Now that the baby had completed his evolution, he had forgotten his past with him. That might not be a bad thing. Let's go, Suyu said dispassionately. Xiangwan glared at the baby angrily. Ungrateful wretch! Wait. The young man stood up. A layer of 9 serenities crystal automatically condensed on his body, turning into a mighty and extraordinary purple armor. A purple crystal crown also condensed on his head. His entire temperament changed abruptly. He was like a king who looked down on the world, overlooking the world. The young man closed his eyes and tried his best to search for the remnant memories in his body. Some remnant memories from when he was a baby suddenly appeared in his mind. Suyu's face appeared from time to time. After a while, he opened his eyes with a complicated expression and said indifferently, "I was born in the sky and on the earth. I have no biological parents." Hearing such words, Xiangwan shook her head and didn't want to explain further. She just felt sorry for Suyu's sacrifice. "But you did seem to have some connection with me when I was a baby," the young man added slowly. His fingertips flickered, and a drop of purple crystal appeared in his palm. 2 strange liquid droplets were sealed in the crystal. "I'll give this to you, and the relationship between us will be written off." The young man flicked his finger and shot the crystal over. "After you swallow the liquid droplets, they can help you break through a level." Suyu took it expressionlessly and left without looking back. The young man stared at Suyu's retreating back and said coldly, "My name is Chu." But Suyu didn't respond at all. He disappeared without a trace. After a while, the young man still stood in the same place, looking at Suyu's retreating back. There was a glint of sorrow in his eyes. "Father, how could Chu forget the kindness of raising me?" The young man knelt on the ground and bowed deeply in the direction where Suyu had left. "But if I were to be with you, I would definitely implicate you, so I could only pretend to forget everything. I'm unfilial, I can only repay you in my next life." After a while, he stood up. Chapter 2549. Of the 4 heavenly kings, I am the third to come back to life. Let me and him complete the final wish of ancient god Jiuyu. The youth looked disdainfully at the world, his eyes shooting out a monstrous cold light. There was naturally a reason why ancient god Nine Nether, on the verge of death, used the vast energy of the heavenly Tao to seal the entire ancient god realm instead of ordering his subordinates to resist. Now, after more than half an epoch, this youth was the 3rd heavenly king to awaken. He would find another heavenly king to complete the plan of ancient god Nine Nether. Suyu, who was already far away, seemed to have a premonition. He stopped in his tracks and looked behind him. Why did he recognize me as his father? In fact, Suyu had always had a question in his heart. Could it be that a baby would casually recognize the first creature it saw as its father? Or was there another reason? "Brother Su, this is how people are. Don't be sad. Just take it that you've brought him up for nothing," said Yu Xiangwan. Suyu shook his head lightly and took out the crystal. "Do you really think that he has forgotten the past?" Suyu stared at the 2 drops of liquid inside. "If he had forgotten, why would he give one to each of us? It's because he still remembers everything that happened between you, me, and him. If he really only remembered Suyu, he would have given it to Suyu alone. Why did he have to give an extra drop to Yu Xiangwan? He didn't forget? Then why did he?" Yu Xiangwan said, "Could it be that after the evolution, his strength has increased tremendously, so he doesn't want to acknowledge us anymore?" Suyu shook his head lightly. "I don't think so. He must have his own reasons." From the very beginning, Suyu could tell that Chuyu was using this as an excuse to drive them away. It was just that Suyu did not point it out. "Let's go. It's impossible that the great manager and the rest did not notice the second manager's death," Suyu said seriously. Having personally witnessed Xiaohao's power of time in the second steward's body, Su Yu guessed that there must be some sort of connection between the two stewards. Half a month away, under the command of the great steward, the group of them ransacked a city. Manager, I found a map of the Netherworld realm. The leader of the Golden Armored Hall happily handed over a map. When he unfolded it, he saw that there were more than a dozen densely marked dots on it. One of the light spots was dark red. The manager gently tapped the dark red dot of light with his finger, and the dot of light radiated out a new miniature map. That small map showed where they were currently. The manager twisted his beard and smiled. What Master said is correct. The Netherworld realm is divided into 49 parts, and our high solitary sect happens to be directly above one of them. The ancient god domain of the 9 Nether wasn't connected. Instead, it was connected by 49 points. The Netherworld realm they had seen so far was just a small part of it. The map displayed in front of him was the full picture of this point. The chief steward scanned the map. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of a place that was specially marked. His pupils shrank. The 9th Abyss. Great Steward, what is the 9th Abyss? The Golden Armor asked curiously. The manager said, the 9th Underworld Abyss is the center of the Netherworld realm. It said that there might be third-stage crystals of the Netherworld realm inside. Rank 3? The Golden Armored Hall Master clicked his tongue. A third-grade Netherworld crystal was practically an existence of legend. Tianqi Palace controlled such a vast area, and had held countless Tianqi grand feasts over the years, but they had never been able to display a piece of third-grade 9 nether crystal. It was obvious how precious it was. If they could excavate it in large quantities, it would be much more profitable than picking up 5th grade and 6th grade 9 nether crystals. Gather everyone. We will immediately set off for the 9th Underworld Abyss. The manager's eyes were filled with excitement. That master had instructed that if they could discover the 9th Underworld Abyss, they would receive an additional reward. Furthermore, everything found in the 9th Underworld Abyss belonged to them. Very quickly, the rebel army was gathered. Crack! At that moment, there was a slight shattering sound in the chest of the manager. A trickle of blood flowed from his chest. Great Steward, are you injured? The Golden Armored Hall Master asked in surprise. Could he have been accidentally injured during the petrification process? No. The manager's expression was solemn as he stopped the bleeding. He said in a low voice, "It's the second steward. He's already dead." What? The Golden Armored Hall Master sucked in a breath of cold air. The second steward was a later stage void nirvana existence. He was only one step away from catching up to the great steward. A person with such a cultivation base had actually died? Was it done by Su Yu and the others? The Golden Armored Hall Master shuddered. The great steward shook his head. I don't think so. Apart from his extremely high cultivation base, the second steward had another life-saving amulet. He couldn't have been killed by 2 ants like Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan. Only he knew that the second steward had a bit of the time reversal domain left behind by Great Emperor Xiaohao. Even if he was killed, he could instantly reverse time. Only if he met someone who could completely crush him and had nowhere to run would such a situation occur. However, it was clear that Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan did not have such abilities. Should we go over and take a look? The Golden Armored Hall Master asked. The Great Steward asked, do you also want to meet the terrifying existence that killed the second steward? Although they were both under Great Emperor Xiaohao, what right did he have to be responsible for the second steward's death? If he died, then so be it. Wouldn't it be better for him to keep the fruit to himself? Let's go. The group left hurriedly. Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan continued forward aimlessly. The entire ancient god realm of Jiuyo was boundless. Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan had been traveling for half a year but had not found the exit. They just kept moving forward based on their intuition. Brother Su, did you notice that the grades of the 9 Serenities crystals we encountered along the way were getting higher and higher? Su Yu nodded. How could he not have noticed? Since a few months ago, 5th grade 9 Serenity's crystals could be seen everywhere along the way. Now, the ground was littered with 4th grade 9 Serenity's crystals. The two of them worked together to clear away the 9 Serenity's crystals that weighed millions of pounds. Among them, the 4th grade ones weighed as much as 100,000 pounds. The only pity was that there were no 9 Serenity's crystals among them. Wait, there's a very thick corpse energy ahead, Yu Xiangwan suddenly reminded. As a member of the corpse clan, he was far more sensitive to corpse energy than ordinary people. Corpse energy? Su Yu was slightly puzzled. The ancient god realm of Jiuyo had been sealed, and all the living creatures were nowhere to be found. How could there be corpses? The two of them moved forward quietly and found that they had reached the end of the ancient god realm of Jiuyo. Blocking their way was a boundless, gigantic cliff. The cliff had no end in sight. Below the cliff was a bottomless, suffocating dark abyss. Gazing at the abyss, Su Yu vaguely felt that the abyss was also looking at him. He felt a faint sense of unease. The source of the corpse energy had finally been determined. It was a corpse that had rotted for a long time. But when he saw the clothes the corpse was wearing, Su Yu's pupils constricted. How could this be? Chapter 2550. Those clothes. Obviously, Yu Xiangwan also recognized the origin of the clothes. They seemed to be the clothes of the Greater One sect. Both of them saw the surprise in each other's eyes. The ancient god realm of Jiuyo had been sealed for tens of thousands of years, and now it was finally opened. How could the corpse of a Greater One sect disciple appear in the ancient god realm of Jiuyo? Su Yu flew over, checked it, and said, "Died 5 years ago, should be a disciple of the Armament Hall." 5 years ago. The Armament Hall went to the border to fight against Great Emperor Xiaohao and the others who invaded this place. Many people were sacrificed. The corpse in front of them should be the disciple who died that year. But how did his corpse come from the outside world to the ancient god realm of Jiuyo? At that time, the ancient god realm of Jiuyo hadn't been opened yet, right? Brother Su, maybe we can leave the ancient god realm of Jiuyo now. The two of them had no choice but to escape to the ancient god realm of Jiuyo. If they could leave, that would be the best. Staring at the huge abyss under his feet, Su Yu did not take the risk to go inside. Because there was a faint, unsettling aura inside. Although it was very weak, it did not mean that the danger was small. On the contrary, it was likely that the other party was just hiding. Let's cultivate nearby and improve our cultivation first. One more cultivation meant one more hope of survival. Yu Xiangwan agreed. The ancient god realm of Jiuyo was too dangerous. The strength of the two of them was really not enough. Not far away, in a secret place, the two of them hid. They each took a drop of spiritual liquid. Su Yu examined it and found that the spiritual liquid contained a very weak power of the way of heaven. Although it was so weak that it was negligible, for Xian Dao masters like Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan, it was incomparably majestic. Yu Xiangwan took a deep breath. With such rich power, there is still excess to break through a level. Su Yu's eyes flashed. Indeed, once swallowed, the benefits would not only be to break through a level. If they were lucky, they could break through 2 levels. The two of them immediately broke through on the spot. Time passed bit by bit. Half a month later. Above the place where the two of them were, a huge amount of path energy suddenly appeared. The path energy was so rich that it had condensed into mist. The mist surged into their bodies, causing their cultivation to skyrocket. A powerful wave of middle nirvana middle stage energy swept in all directions. Especially Su Yu. When Yu Xiangwan's body was full and stopped absorbing the Taoist energy, the 800 Taoist marks in Su Yu's body were only filled by 1/10. He continued to suck in air. Half a day later, Yu Xiangwan had stopped her training and was staring at the lingering mist of Tao energy above Su Yu's head with her mouth agape. He had successfully broken through to the mid-stage of middle nirvana. The profound Tao power in his body was already completely saturated, and could no longer be absorbed. However, Suyu was like a bottomless pit, and he was still crazily absorbing it. Suyu didn't stop until the effect of the liquid droplet had completely faded away and all the Taoist energy in the vicinity had been absorbed. As he opened his eyes, a formless wave radiated from Suyu. Yu Xiangwan was caught off guard and was pushed back by the aura. He subconsciously released his dense profound Wei energy in an attempt to resist. However, the result shocked him. In front of the power of the mysterious Tao that Suyu had inadvertently released, his own power of the mysterious Tao was pierced through like a piece of paper. Then, he was swept away and smashed into the ground, rolling over and over. He climbed up with a face full of dust and dirt, looking like he had seen a ghost. What happened to you? He had also broken through to the middle stage of nirvana. However, the profound Tao power in Suyu's body was more than 10 times stronger than his. That profound Tao power could completely compete with the late stage of nirvana. It's because of my physique. Suyu stood up indifferently and patted the dust off his body. Everything stemmed from the 800 Taoist marks in his body. Every additional Taoist mark meant that he could accommodate an additional portion of profound Tao power. 800 Taoist marks was naturally more powerful than ordinary profound Tao power of the same level. Damn it! I am a descendant of the ancient gods, and I can't even compare to you, a descendant of the ancient gods. There's no justice in this. Yu Xiangwan said angrily. Between the descendants of the ancient gods and the descendants, it was obvious that the descendants had the advantage of bloodline. Whether it was in terms of cultivation speed or strength, they were far superior to the descendant. After all, the descendants had to rely on themselves, apart from some of the things of the ancient god. In the end, as a descendant of the ancient gods, Yu Xiangwan was completely outshone by Suyu, the descendant. This made Yu Xiangwan feel a little defeated. Suyu's expression was indifferent. He would not tell Yu Xiangwan how the 800 Taoist marks in his body had come about. When he broke through the 8 great supremes and felt the pressure of the heavenly law, the despair he felt. Everything he had now was something that he deserved. Their cultivation levels had greatly increased, and they were more confident about entering the abyss. But just as the two were about to set off, a dark cloud suddenly sped over from afar. The clouds were densely packed, filled with innumerable experts. There was an existence at the level of an underworld master, and it was incomparably powerful. What a coincidence! Yu Xiangwan was extremely fearful. The Great Steward's cultivation was much stronger than the Second Steward's. A mere Second Steward was enough to make Suyu reveal his identity as the descendant of the ancient god Jilong and activate the heaven-destroying seal. One could imagine how terrifying the Great Steward was. The two people who were about to show themselves immediately lay low. All right, let the Great Steward scout ahead. Yu Xiangwan chuckled. We'll just take advantage of the situation from behind. Suyu did not speak. This advantage might not be easy to take. However, the abyss was the only way out of the ancient god domain of the Nine Nether, so he had to go there. The chief steward and the others landed and stared at the unfathomable abyss in front of them. Their expressions were equally solemn. Only after activating all the defenses did he slowly descend. The chief manager said solemnly, "Do your best to collect 9 darkness crystals of a higher grade, understand?" Everyone nodded and entered. The edge of the abyss was bordered by sheer cliffs. As expected, it was inlaid with densely packed netherworld crystals. 4th grade 9th hell crystals that were extremely rare in other places seemed to be free of charge here as they filled the surroundings. Tens of thousands of them hurriedly plucked for a while, but they didn't manage to reduce the number of netherworld crystals by much. We're rich. There were so many 4th grade netherworld crystals. They could rest easy for the rest of their lives. Ta! The Golden Armor Hall Master was digging when he suddenly discovered a 9 nether crystal that was almost black. He cried out in surprise, 3rd grade 9 nether crystal. There was a third-grade 9 nether crystal that weighed 5,000 kilograms hidden within the fourth-grade 9 nether crystal. Because of his excitement, he didn't even have the time to keep the fourth-grade 9 darkness crystal that he dug out, and he just casually tossed it away. The fourth-grade netherworld crystal fell straight into the abyss. Third grade. Everyone looked over. Even the chief manager looked over excitedly, saying, "Dig it out immediately." His face was full of excitement and a smile. If they were to pluck here for a year and dig out all the 9 nether crystals, the time crystals that they could exchange for would be more than enough to establish a sect. They could completely establish 100 greater one sects and become a transcendent existence second only to Nanming City. And he was about to become a peerless figure that dominated a region thousands of times better than the chief manager of the greater one sect. Continue digging. The appearance of the third-grade 9 nether crystal excited the others, and they all stepped up their digging. The sound of clanking filled the entire abyss. But, at this time, an inexplicable sigh suddenly echoed in the abyss. What an insatiable group of people! As soon as the voice sounded, the chief manager shuddered all over, shivering as he looked down into the abyss. Who? He stared fixedly at the bottomless abyss and asked. He had never heard that there were living beings living in the 9 nether abyss. Sigh. There was another sigh. Then, there was the sound of water splashing, from weak to strong in the abyss. Visible to the naked eye, the abyss was filled with water that was as black as ink. In the water, there were strange creatures that had the upper body of a human and the lower body of a snake. Without exception, they were all females, and they were all extremely beautiful. Even the many experts who were used to seeing beautiful women all over the world were staring unblinkingly at the groups of beautiful creatures. Among them, on a reef island that rose from the water, sat a beautiful middle-aged woman. Her beauty was even more suffocating. Perhaps it was impossible to find someone who could match her beauty in the world. After a moment of daze, the chief manager finally recognized what these things were, and his expression changed dramatically. Quickly leave the abyss. It's the 9 nether demon. A terrifying creature with a human body and a snake tail that could use its singing to lure martial artists into the depths of the mine, making it impossible for them to return. But didn't this creature only exist in the huge mine at the border of the Greater One sect? Why would it be in the abyss of the 9 nether ancient god domain? The chief manager reacted the fastest, and immediately rushed out of the abyss. When the others heard that it was the 9 nether demons, they all revealed expressions of shock and fled. However, the thousands of 9 nether demons that were swimming in the water all floated to the surface, and their beautiful voices concealed the beautiful sounds of nature. Don't listen. The chief manager used his powerful profound way energy to seal his hearing, determined not to be affected by the singing. But even so, the singing was everywhere. Some weak singing entered his ears. The chief manager's expression became a little sluggish. Fortunately, he was only slightly affected. He forcefully shook his head and flew out in one breath. The others were not so lucky. Apart from the golden-armored hall master and the 1,000 or so people who were near the edge of the abyss, they were the first to escape. The others were all mesmerized by the singing. In a daze, they all fell from the cliff and into the water. A group of 9 nether demons excitedly rushed forward, hugging them tightly and intimately rubbing their faces. The 9 nether demon on the reef looked at the chief manager, who had already escaped into the horizon, and said softly, "Can you escape?" Her red lips opened slightly, and she was actually singing personally. An ethereal, mournful, and otherworldly sound of nature slowly floated out from her throat. The chief manager, who had already escaped far away, could not seal the singing at all with the profound way energy on the surface of his body, and it immediately pierced through his soul. The chief manager paled. You are the 9 nether demon empress. Chapter 25:51. Who would have thought that he would actually run into it? This caused the head manager to feel despair. No! However, as his mind roared, he gradually lost control. The clarity in his eyes faded bit by bit. If the Great Keeper was already in such a state, how could Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan be spared? Although they were quite far away from the abyss, the 9 nether demonic empress singing made it impossible for them to avoid it. The moment Su Yu heard the singing, he knew that something was wrong. He immediately covered his ears with the power of the mysterious Tao. Therefore, when the song reached his ears, it was not that strong. However, Yu Xiangwan's reaction was timely. However, his mysterious path energy wasn't as dense as Su Yu's. Thus, he was immediately bewitched by the 9th nether demonic empress singing. Empress! Yu Xiangwan got up and walked towards the abyss in a daze. Su Yu pulled Yu Xiangwan back. Not only that, she even used her space domain to forcefully lock Yu Xiangwan in place, not allowing her to fall into the hands of the 9 Serenities demon. However, Su Yu wasn't feeling any better. In the end, he heard the singing. His will to resist was rapidly weakening. It wouldn't be long before he too would be controlled by the 9 nether demonic empress. Chirp! At the critical moment, a sharp cry of a phoenix suddenly sounded from beyond the 9 heavens. The sound of huge wings flapping rapidly came from the 9 heavens. The expressions of the group of 9 nether demons suddenly changed, and they all grabbed the experts they had captured and dove into the water. The 9 nether demonic empress revealed a cold expression and stopped chanting, "Hateful 9 nether phoenix." After he finished speaking, he swept away the manager who was under his control and dived into the water. Above the 9 heavens, a large patch of emerald green suddenly appeared. It was as if a 9 nether jade flame was burning in the sky. Then, Baihua suddenly jumped into the abyss at an astonishing speed. It lit up the dark abyss, making it brightly lit up. At a close distance, he could see that the jade flames were filled with phoenixes. The group of phoenixes carried the 9 nether green flame. As it flapped its wings, countless 9 nether emerald flames poured down, incinerating all living beings. Moreover, the phoenixes seemed to be feeding on the 9 nether demons. They immediately flew into the abyss and carried away the 9 nether demons that didn't have the time to dive. One of the phoenixes was especially huge. It was even bigger than all the phoenixes combined. It dove headfirst into the pitch-black water, chasing after the 9 nether succubus empress. The 9 nether demonic empress was both shocked and angry. Damn it! It opened its mouth and spat out a sound wave. This sound wave had a terrifying might that surpassed that of a tunnel master. If he were to rush out of the abyss, all living beings in the vicinity would be slaughtered by the sound waves. However, the giant phoenix seemed to be the bane of the 9 Serenities' charm. It opened its mouth and let out a sharp cry, completely destroying the sound wave. At the same time, its sharp beak pecked at the 9 nether succubus empress body like lightning. The 9th nether succubus empress cried out in pain as a large hole appeared in her body. Protect the emperor! The smaller 9 Serenities demons in the vicinity rushed over and blocked the way forward. But under the attack of the giant phoenixes, the group of 9 Serenities demons were torn to shreds like pieces of paper, and were taken away by the phoenixes that were chasing after them. However, the 9th nether demonic empress took the opportunity to escape deeper into the abyss. The giant phoenix hesitated for a moment before looking deeper into the abyss. Then, it slowly stopped its pursuit. It was as if there was an existence in the abyss that even he was afraid of. Chirp! With a cry, the giant phoenix led a group of phoenixes out of the abyss. However, the rebels who were lucky enough to escape were not saved. Because there were still many phoenixes who had not found food, they took them away. Su Yu sucked in a breath. He still remembered the first time he had gone to the abandoned mine. He had wanted to explore the other world in the hole. A bird-like creature had flapped its wings and created a huge 9 Serenities jade flame. Now, it seemed that it had been a phoenix that had flown there by accident. Su Yu pulled Yu Xiangwan to lie down on the ground and hid again. But the phoenix's senses were shockingly sharp. Several of the phoenixes rushed over, their sharp claws clawing at the place where Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan were hiding. There was no way to hide anymore. Su Yu could only grab Yu Xiangwan and escape. Space domain. In an instant, he had traveled hundreds of millions of miles. Ever since his space domain had reached the intermediate level, the distance he could travel was 10 times greater than before. In an instant, he had disappeared without a trace, causing the group of phoenixes to pounce on empty air. The phoenixes surrounding the giant phoenix were referring to the phoenixes. One of them spoke in the human language and let out a soft sound of surprise. "It's that human from back then." Its phoenix eyes turned, and it immediately turned around and shot toward the place where Su Yu was. The 9 Serenity's jade flame burst out from its body, and its speed skyrocketed 10,000 times. Su Yu had just appeared when he felt a cold wind coming from behind him. Turning his head to look, his eyelids couldn't help but twitch. It was a phoenix whose cultivation had reached the later stage of nirvana void. It was staring at him coldly. A pair of sharp claws reached toward Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan at the same time. Su Yu didn't even think about it. He immediately shouted, "Time set?" However, the phoenix didn't seem to be restricted by the time domain. It reached out without any hindrance. Su Yu's heart jumped. He took out the demonic ape puppet and instilled a large number of time crystals into it to activate it. In an instant, the demonic ape puppet roared and used its body to block the sharp claws. However, in an instant, its chest was pierced by the sharp claws and split open on the spot. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Su Yu activated the space domain for the second time and escaped again. However, he hadn't escaped for long when he heard the movement of the phoenix behind him. "Human, if I wanted to kill you, you would have died a long time ago." Strangely, the phoenix was very calm. Su Yu stopped in his tracks. An existence of the later stage of nirvana void was qualified to say such words. "What's the reason for not killing me?" Su Yu turned around, on high alert. The 9 nether green flames on the phoenix's body retracted, and she turned into a human. It was a beautiful woman dressed in colorful clothes, surrounded by halos from head to toe. However, her expression was exceptionally cold. "Because you are good at the space domain." Back when she was patrolling the area, she accidentally found a gap. Unfortunately, Su Yu happened to probe a wisp of soul strength in. She casually shot out the 9 nether green flames, intending to burn the other party to death. However, to her surprise, the other party was proficient in the space domain and was able to escape. What was even more unexpected was that after so many years, the other party actually broke into the ancient god realm of Jiu. "I need you, so I will spare your life." "It's that simple," the woman said indifferently. "Is there anything else you want to ask?" Thousands of thoughts flashed through Su Yu's mind. After a moment, he pointed to Yu Xiangwan beside him. "What about him?" "He's useless to me." "Kill him." The woman was exceptionally ruthless, but after glancing at Su Yu, she said, "However, for your sake, I can let him go." The woman in colorful clothes flicked her finger, and Yu Xiangwan, who had fallen into a daze, immediately woke up. Staring at the woman in front of him, his pupils constricted. It was as if he had faintly discerned something from the woman. "What do you want me to do?" Su Yu asked. The woman in colorful clothes turned around and said, "Just follow me." She took a step forward and appeared beyond the 9 heavens. Su Yu pondered for a moment and could only follow. He secretly sent a telepathic message to Yu Xiangwan, "Act according to the situation." Unexpectedly, Yu Xiangwan said gravely, "Don't act rashly." Su Yu wanted to ask more questions, but the woman turned her head and looked at Yu Xiangwan meaningfully. Su Yu immediately fell silent and did not ask further. 2 hours later, they continued to travel above the 9 heavens. Finally, they found that right above the abyss, at the very top of the sky, there was a bird's nest suspended in the clouds. There were tens of thousands of phoenixes resting on it. The woman brought Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan to one of the larger bird's nests. The bird's nest was filled with the corpses of the 9 nether demons. However, they did not die from being eaten, but from being drained of all their blood. "Both of you wait here first," the woman said coldly. She seemed to want to report to the giant phoenix where she had gone just now. Before she left, she said without turning her head, "Not every phoenix is as easy to talk to as me. If you want to be eaten, you can go out to your heart's content." As she said that, she walked away and did not set up any restrictive measures outside the nest. Wan came to the edge of the nest and stared at the incomparably vast phoenix's nest, her eyes solemn. At this moment, a phoenix suddenly swooped down and brushed past Wan's body. A strong hurricane almost swept Wan away. Fortunately, Suyu had sharp eyes and quick hands and pulled her back. That phoenix flew over and stopped in midair, transforming into a black-clothed youth. His eyes were cold, revealing a cruel arc. "Coldfeather just likes to do some boring things. She's too pedantic and too benevolent." It sounded like he was very dissatisfied that the female phoenix had brought the two of them back alive. However, due to his fear of the female phoenix, he did not dare to go deep into her nest to capture them. "However, I believe both of you will not live for long. Countless people have died in what Coldfeather wants to do, but she has never succeeded." With a cold laugh, the man in black turned into a phoenix and left. "Brother Yu, do you have anything to say?" Suyu asked. It seemed that Wan had some understanding of this group of phoenixes. Wan nodded heavily. "I am very worried." "It's normal to be worried," Suyu said indifferently. "With the current environment, it would be strange not to be worried." However, Wan looked at Suyu, her expression becoming more and more solemn. "I am worried about you." "Me?" No matter how he looked at it, Wan was in more danger. On the contrary, Suyu not only had more profound mysterious path energy, but he was also proficient in the 8 great domains. The chances of him escaping were higher. Wan nodded deeply. "I will be fine, but you?" Suyu's expression also became serious. "Brother Yu, please speak frankly." He could feel that Wan was especially serious. "Brother Su, why do you think there are still living creatures in the ancient god realm of Jiyo after being sealed for so many years?" Wan suddenly asked. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. Indeed, he had almost overlooked it. The ancient god realm of Jiyo had been sealed for an entire era. Even time had been frozen. Where did life come from? "You mean, this group of phoenixes are not living creatures?" Wan nodded deeply and pointed to herself. "They are the same as me, Corpse Clan." "Corpse Clan?" Suyu's pupils shrank instantly. He had not encountered the Corpse Clan for a long time. If it was the Corpse Clan, then it would be dangerous. Most of the Corpse Clan were bloodthirsty people. Subconsciously, they wanted to turn all living creatures into corpses and make them one of their own. He was deep in the Corpse Clan at the moment, and it could indeed be considered extremely dangerous. In particular, the group of Corpse Clan was ridiculously powerful. If they really wanted to turn Suyu, it would be very difficult for him to resist. Chapter 2552. "Let's bide our time for now," Suyu calmly said, while restraining the strange look in his eyes. At least for the time being, he didn't have to worry about becoming a corpse. The two waited patiently. After a while, 2 women in golden clothes flew into the nest. "Come with us," the woman in golden clothes said coldly, looking at Suyu and Yu with unfriendly eyes. Wan frowned. The Nirvana Void woman in colorful clothes had warned them not to go out at will. It's okay, since they dared to come in, they must have been instructed by that phoenix. Suyu looked indifferent. Sure enough, seeing that Suyu and Yu did not move, the woman in golden clothes said, "It's Elderling Yu who wants to see you. But why didn't she come herself?" While thinking, Suyu and Yu followed the 2 women in golden clothes to the largest nest in the entire nest. There, they could see a huge giant phoenix. It was the Phoenix King. It stood on a tree branch with its eyes closed. The surrounding tree branches were densely packed with phoenixes standing around him. The woman in colorful clothes named Lingyu stood in the main hall under the branches, waiting calmly. When Su Yu and Yu Xiangwan arrived, the woman in colorful clothes bowed to the giant phoenix and said, "These are the two people I brought back." The giant phoenix slowly opened its eyelids, but just a glimpse of its eyes made Yu Xiangwan's heart beat wildly. She had the illusion that she was about to die. The descendants of the ancient god corpse ancestor, interesting, the giant phoenix said hoarsely. Hearing this, all the phoenixes were surprised. The ancient god corpse ancestor. As the corpse clan, in a sense, they were the people of the ancient god corpse ancestor. Lingyu's cold face showed a touch of surprise. She had only intended to bring back Su Yu, and Yu Xiangwan was just incidentally brought back. He was actually a descendant of an ancient god. From now on, you will stay here. There should not be many descendants of the ancient god corpse ancestor, the giant phoenix said slowly, deciding Yu Xiangwan's order. As a person of the corpse clan, he felt it was necessary to cultivate Yu Xiangwan. "So, you are the human who is proficient in the space domain, as Lingyu said?" The giant phoenix looked at Su Yu. All of a sudden, Su Yu felt a strong pressure pressing down on him. The domain in his body was released uncontrollably to resist the pressure. The first to come out was the space domain. A universe appeared around Su Yu. Then the time domain. Then there was the soul domain. The 8 domains were forced out one after another. Cold Feather was incomparably shocked. 8 great supreme domains. This is... The giant phoenix's eyes opened completely, and a hint of surprise appeared in its eyes. "I truly didn't think that ancient god Nine Dragon still had a successor." The phoenix's eyes revealed an ancient look. He stared at Su Yu. "The most unbelievable thing is that you have mastered the 8 great supreme realm. This should be impossible." Ancient god Nine Dragon's success was largely because he had stolen the fortunes of the 8 gods. Things had changed with the passage of time. Not to mention the fact that the 8 great rulers didn't have that kind of good fortune for Su Yu to obtain. So what if it was intercepted? Would the heavenly Tao allow the birth of a second ancient god Nine Dragon? Impossible. All of the phoenixes were shocked. Apart from the number 1 ancient god in the world, there was actually a second person who had successfully grasped the 8 supreme realm. Unbelievable. So what if you're the successor of ancient god Nine Dragons? He's trapped in the ancient god domain of the 9, nether just like us, and he'll never be able to leave, a black phoenix said coldly from atop a branch. That voice should be the black phoenix that had previously wanted to capture Yu Xiangwan, right? The giant phoenix was silent, then let out a long sigh. "You have indeed come to the wrong place." Yu Xiangwan was slightly surprised. Why did he say that they would never be able to leave? At the very most, they could go back the way they came and return to the Greater One sect from the hole in the abandoned mine. As if he had seen through her thoughts, Cold Feather looked at Su Yu and said, "This is also the reason I brought you here. We need your space domain to open the door to heaven for us." She looked up at the vault of heaven. Su Yu followed her gaze and looked over. Only then did he realize that there was a giant gate made of black feathers in the sky above the nest. The giant gate shrank, towering and motionless. "Can't we go back the way we came?" Su Yu asked. Cold Feather did not speak, but pointed in the direction Su Yu and the others had come from. Su Yu stood high above and looked back. Only then did he discover with horror that the world he came from had disappeared. There was only a river flowing with yellow water, extending into the unknown darkness in the void. He was stunned. "That's not right. When we came, it was the complete 9 netherworld." Yu Xiangwan gasped. She could not understand the strange scene in front of her. Cold Feather's expression was calm as he said, "Do you still not understand? The 9 netherworld is a world where time is frozen. The traces of your previous existence no longer exist. At the same time, it was impossible for a person to be in 2 places at the same time. Every place that existed must perish in another place, and the entire ancient god realm of the Nine Nether was at the same time. The way Su Yu and the others came, as well as the world they saw, naturally no longer existed. They were the only ones left. Every year, the ancient god realm of the Nine Nether will be cleaned up at a fixed time. The traces of your previous existence have been completely swept away. How do you go back? Yu Xiangwan thought about it seriously for a while before she understood. But Su Yu, who had mastered the time domain, easily understood the other party's meaning. Time had drowned out their past, including the process when they came. So, they could no longer go back. So, you have no choice but to try to open that door. Cold Feather looked deeply at Su Yu, his eyes full of anticipation. The other phoenixes also looked at Su Yu with hopeful eyes. The space domain was the only opportunity to open the Nine Nether ancient god door. Su Yu stood silently. After a while, he said softly, "I'll give it a try." A myriad of universes appeared around him, suddenly wrapping around the door. With the characteristic of the space domain that spanned the myriad worlds, it should be able to pass through the door successfully. However, the universes crashed into the giant door. Pieces of feathers danced in the air, blocking the universe outside. The attempt failed. The phoenixes wore disappointed looks on their faces. They couldn't even use the space domain. They were going to be completely trapped in the ancient god realm of the Nine Nether, never to see the light of day again. "I told you, it's useless to look for them. Just eat them," the black phoenix mocked. Cold Feather's expression was cold, and there was deep disappointment in his eyes. The giant phoenix closed its eyes again, no longer looking at Su Yu. He had lost his value. "Eat him. At the very least, we'll convert him into our corpse clan." The phoenix's eyes emitted dark red rays of light. Su Yu's face was as calm as water. He had expected all of this. Chapter 2553. His voice wasn't loud, but when it entered the ears of the many phoenixes, it carried a calming power. The giant phoenix, which had already closed its eyes, slowly opened them. "Why do you say that?" Su Yu lowered his head and looked at the bottomless abyss. "That's because there's a door that leads to the outside world in the abyss where the Nine Serenities demon resides." "Nonsense." The black phoenix jumped down and transformed into a black youth. His body exuded the aura of the Nirvana Void Realm, and he stared at Su Yu with extreme hostility. If the Phantom of the Nine Nether had the chance to leave the ancient god realm of the Nine Nether, would he still linger here for many years? Su Yu said placidly, "I don't know about that. All I know is that there is a huge mine in the outside world that connects to the abyss." The most powerful evidence was that the corpse that should have belonged to the Greater One Sect disciple had unexpectedly appeared in the abyss. That group of 9 nether charms definitely controlled the entrance to the ancient god domain of the Nine Nether. It was just that the phoenix did not know. Words alone are no proof. The black-clothed youth strode over. "In my opinion, it's better to execute you directly. That way, you won't be able to bewitch people." "Wait." The giant phoenix opened its eyes slightly and gazed deeply at Su Yu. It said slowly, "He didn't lie." His gaze was exceptionally sharp, as if he could see through a person's heart. "What?" The phoenixes became excited again, and they started chatting with one another. The giant phoenix asked, and Su Yu told her about his findings and judgment. The enormous phoenix pondered deeply when it heard this. No wonder that group of cunning netherworld ghosts have been reproducing for so many years, and the number of their descendants is faintly increasing. So it turns out that they've already found a way to leave the ancient god domain of the netherworld. Ever since the appearance of the Phoenix and the 9 Serenities Phantom, the two sides had been constantly fighting. Whoever had the advantage in numbers would be able to suppress the other side. For many years, the Phoenix had always had the upper hand. Only now did they realize that perhaps it was the netherworld charm that had bewitched them. Over the years, they had secretly transformed many new netherworld demons, secretly accumulating power. One day, he would defeat the phoenixes in one fell swoop. However, everything is just speculation. I need to confirm it, the giant phoenix said unhurriedly. The black phoenix volunteered. I'll lead the way myself. The giant phoenix shook its head slightly. With the natural enemy relationship between us phoenixes and the 9 Serenity's demons, they'll be able to sense you approaching the abyss. The numerous phoenixes looked at Su Yu knowingly. Bring the other survivors as well. Also, bring out the survivors of their spatial storage devices, the giant phoenix said. Most of the rebels had already been eaten. Only a group of people with decent strength were prepared to be converted. While a group of phoenixes went forward to suppress the people, the black phoenix walked over and took away Su Yu's space storage device. After opening it, it poured the contents out. Immediately, 2 living beings fell from the sky. One was the little Qilin. One was the wonderful fragrance hall master. In order to hurry on with his journey, he had no choice but to put Hall Master Wonderful Fragrance into his spatial storage device. She looked around in a daze, and when she found herself surrounded by a group of terrifying phoenixes, she was so scared that she almost screamed. As for the small Qilin, it had followed Su Yu for a long time, and it was already used to all sorts of situations. So, it didn't show any fear as it surveyed its surroundings. Unexpectedly, as soon as the little Qilin appeared, the numerous phoenixes clearly became flustered. Some of the phoenixes even flapped their wings, preparing to fly away. The black phoenix was so frightened that it hurriedly retreated. It stared at the little Qilin in shock. Chaos Beast. The giant phoenix's eyes turned sharp. You actually have a Chaos Beast. Chaos Beast? This was the first time Su Yu had heard someone call the little Qilin that way. In his eyes, the little Qilin was just an ordinary pet. Ling Yu also retreated again and again, vigilant. The little Qilin lowered its voice. Master, have I become more powerful? They all seem to be afraid of me. Su Yu looked at the little Qilin's thin and weak body and said calmly, No. It must be the little Qilin's ability to devour the 9 nether green fire that made these phoenixes afraid. The reason why these phoenixes were so powerful was largely because of the 9 nether green fire in their bodies. The appearance of the little Qilin naturally made them afraid. Kill the Chaos Beast. Kill it. The little Qilin grinned. What are you yelling about? If you yell again, I will eat you all. She licked her tongue involuntarily. For some reason, she felt that these phoenixes seemed to be the same as the exotic creatures in the 9 nether crystals. They were all delicious. Clap, clap. Many phoenixes were really scared and flew away. The giant phoenix hid the strange look in its eyes and shouted, What are you panicking about? A young chaos beast can scare you all like this? With that, the phoenixes finally calmed down. After a while, the giant phoenix said, Human, take care of your pets. Su Yu patted the little Qilin's head and calmed it down. Soon, a group of people was brought over. Thousands of rebel soldiers were eaten until only a dozen or so people were left. Among them, Su Yu knew 2 of them. The Golden Armor Hall Master. Boorish. To be honest, Su Yu was a little surprised that they were so lucky. They were still alive. King, throw them all down. Just use our phoenix's heavenly eye, and we can penetrate their eyes and find out everything in the abyss, the black phoenix said. The giant phoenix shook its head. The 9 nether charms' perception is amazing. Even the slightest movement will be detected. It's not good to have too many people. The giant phoenix stared at them. Among you, I will select 3 people to complete the spy mission. The rest will be distributed by my people. Hearing that, the Golden Armor Hall Master and the others turned pale with fear. They had seen with their own eyes that many captives were eaten alive. This giant phoenix meant that if they did not meet the requirements, they would also be eaten. Elder, may I ask how we are qualified to complete the mission? The Golden Armor Hall Master cupped his fists respectfully. The giant phoenix said calmly, It's very simple. You just have to be strong. Strong? The Golden Armor Hall Master's eyes flickered. Were they going to kill each other? The selection begins now. Only 3 people will remain, the giant phoenix said mercilessly. The corpse clan was cold, heartless, and inhumane. They would not be merciful to their food. What? The Golden Armor Hall Master immediately reacted and distanced himself from his people. Just as he was about to flee, a cold wind brushed past his shoulder from behind. Looking back, he was surprised to see that a Hall Master standing behind him had attacked him. You're courting death. The Golden Armor Hall Master immediately counterattacked. In terms of strength, the Golden Armor Hall Master was slightly superior. He killed the sneak attacker in a few rounds. However, his outstanding strength attracted the attacks of the other strong men. The crowd fell into a frenzy of killing. Only the boorish man, who was weak, retreated to the edge, trembling with fear. Carelessly, he bumped into Hall Master Miaoxiang. She glared at him. Get lost! The boorish man hurriedly pleaded, Hall Master Miaoxiang, Su Yu, save me, please save me. He could see that Su Yu and the others had a special relationship with the giant phoenix. Before Su Yu could say anything, Yu Xiangwan had already let out a cold laugh. Chapter 2554. The blue flames in his eyes suddenly shot out and burned the brute to ashes on the spot. His death is not to be regretted. Yu Xiangwan snorted. How could he forget what this person had done when he and Su Yu were imprisoned in the Heavenly Mine prison? Only thinking of asking for help now? The massacre on the battlefield did not continue for long. In a situation where both sides had their Tao artifacts taken away, the only thing that mattered was whether their domains were powerful or not. After a round of fighting, the Golden Armored Hall Master emerged victorious. He had been fighting for many years, so he was more experienced in killing. That was why he had the last laugh. No, there was another person blocking his way. Su Yu, Yu Xiangwan, Hall Master Miaoxiang, and himself made a total of 4 people. He still needed to kill one more person. However, Su Yu and the other 2 had a harmonious relationship, and it seemed like they wouldn't kill each other. However, it was more likely that they would join forces to kill him. Hence, when the Golden Armored Division Master attacked, he turned into a remnant shadow and went straight for Su Yu's life. Among them, Su Yu was the weakest, and he was also the one he wanted to kill the most. Yu Xiangwan and Hall Master Miaoxiang were about to join forces when Su Yu stopped them. I'll do it myself. He took a quick step forward. He didn't use his domain, nor did he use the little Qilin. He simply slammed his palm onto the body. The Golden Armored Hall Master hesitated when he saw this. Su Yu had actually made such a big deal out of it. Was there a conspiracy behind it? However, he was already like an arrow that had left the bow, and there was no possibility of turning back. When the 2 met, the result was obvious. The Golden Armored Hall Master's bones were cracked, and not a single part of his skin was intact. His eyes were filled with disbelief. You. How could you? The power displayed by Su Yu in that strike had reached the middle stage of the middle nirvana stage, which was far beyond his. Without saying a word, Su Yu walked back into the distance. The Golden Armored Hall Master behind him immediately lost his life force. In the end, the 3 of them survived. The 3 of you have 3 days to prepare, the giant phoenix said emptily. 3 days? What could he prepare in 3 days? Cold Feather said indifferently, Come on, return to my lair. Only Cold Feather could still barely be trusted. The rest of the phoenix lairs, they did not dare to casually enter. He returned to the nest once more. Cold Feather simply tidied up the shriveled corpse of the 9 netherworld's charm in the lair. This information, you guys take a look yourselves. Cold Feather threw them a jade pendant. It contained all sorts of information about the abyss. Su Yu frowned slightly. According to the information, the abyss was a vortex that was created when the energy of the 9 hell heavenly Tao charged out. It was filled with countless netherworld crystals, and it also contained unique black water. That kind of black water could corrode life, so he couldn't stay here for long. As for the deepest part of the black water, there was no detailed introduction. You guys prepare yourselves. After Cold Feather finished talking, he left on his own. It was unknown what he went to do. After Su Yu confirmed that he had left, he isolated the surrounding space on the spot. This trip to the abyss will be fraught with danger. Take this. Su Yu flipped his palm and 3 feathers appeared. This is... Yu Xiangwan gasped. This is the feather from the door to heaven. Su Yu nodded slightly. In fact, he could open that door. However, he knew very well that once he opened it, he would not be far from death. With the ruthlessness and inhumanity of the phoenixes, the first thing they would do once they were free would probably be to kill him. Or they could turn him into one of their own. That was why Su Yu had secretly played tricks and pretended that he was unable to open the gate of the sky. I have already secretly checked this feather. It contains an exceptionally powerful heavenly law of the 9 nether energy. It can be used for self-defense. Yu Xiangwan was astounded. Su Yu had hidden it too well. He could even hide it from the giant phoenixes. 3 days is enough to refine it. Hence, the 3 of them immediately began to refine the feather. 3 days passed in a flash. Several phoenixes came to the nest and stuck a talisman on each of them. Through the talisman, the phoenixes could rely on their heavenly eyes to share the perspective of Su Yu and the others. Let's go. The phoenixes each grabbed a person and swooped down at an alarming speed. When they were still a distance away from the abyss, they dropped all 3 of them. Su Yu said, "Remember not to make any noise." That day, the reason the Great Manager and the others alarmed the 9 nether demons was because a netherworld crystal had fallen into the abyss, causing the 9 nether demons to collectively move out. Yu Xiangwan and Hall Master Miaoxiang nodded and quietly sneaked into the abyss. They had just dived into the black water when they felt a bone-piercing chill eroding their vitality. Fortunately, the talisman that the phoenixes stuck on their bodies was also a talisman that defended against the black water. From within the talisman, a warm energy gushed out, sweeping away the chill. The 3 of them continued to dive without any hindrance. Half a day later, in the dark water they could faintly see a bright light. Looking closely, it was the eyes of a few dead phoenixes, emitting a faint glow at the bottom of the abyss. Under the illumination of the light, a deep cave came into view. A few 9 nether demons patrolled nearby and were on guard. Freeze! Su Yu activated the time domain and froze all the 9 nether demons. In this way, the 3 of them successfully entered the cave without alerting anyone. Inside the cave there was a huge square. Near the square were cliffs and precipices. The cliffs were covered with caves, each with a 9 nether demon resting in it. There were so many of them that it was shocking. In the middle of the square there was a giant door that was as black as ink. The shape of the giant door was exactly the same as the one in the sky. However, the color was pitch black. What was even more surprising was that the giant black door had long been opened, and there were groups of 9 nether demons shuttling back and forth in the giant black door. Retreat. Su Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. He believed that the phoenixes had already detected what they were seeing through their shared perspective. The master of the Miaoxiang clan resisted the urge to rush out from inside and silently followed Su Yu to leave. However, just as Su Yu turned around, he quietly left a space domain in the cave. At the same time, in the phoenix's nest, tens of thousands of phoenixes were resting in their nests, overlooking the scene in front of them. The giant black door that Su Yu and the others had detected did indeed exist, and just as Su Yu had said, it had been successfully opened. The 9 nether demons had long achieved the ability to successfully shuttle through it, but they had been hiding it. One day, when they had enough power, they would rush out. "King, the exit has appeared, let's go." Ling Yu was full of fighting spirit. The rest of the phoenixes were shouting for war. The giant door in the abyss had been opened, and that was their only hope of leaving. The giant phoenix's eyes slowly opened, and after a long time, it said slowly, "Get ready to fight." They had been trapped in the ancient god realm of the Nine Nether for too long. They didn't want to wait a moment longer. Ling Yu's beautiful eyes flashed. What should we do with those people? Of course, she was asking about Su Yu, Yu Xiangwan, and the others. The giant phoenix said faintly, "Ancient god corpse ancestor will stay, and the rest will be left to you to deal with." Chapter 25:55. The phoenixes acted swiftly and decisively. Now that he had discovered that the giant door was open, he had to act immediately. Apart from a few phoenixes, including Coldfeather, who stayed inside and outside the nest, the rest of the phoenixes followed the giant phoenix and swooped down. They were extremely fast. Su Yu and the others had just left the abyss when they brought the boundless 9 nether emerald flames deep into the abyss. The entire pitch-black abyss was instantly burned by the 9 secret jade-green fire, turning it into a wretched green color. The phoenix's surprise attack caught the 9 Serenities demon off guard. The 9 Serenities demon at the entrance of the cave issued a frantic warning, but it still couldn't stop the ferocity of the phoenixes and was torn to pieces on the spot. With the giant phoenix in the lead, they entered the pitch-black cave, entered the 9 Serenities demon's lair, and arrived at the center of the plaza. Kill. Leave no one alive. The giant phoenix had already discovered through the shared vision of Su Yu and the others that there were not many 9 nether demons here. Even the powerful 9 nether demonic empress was nowhere to be found. That was why he dared to give the order to attack the lair of the netherworld demon. Phoenixes made up the majority. The battle immediately turned into a one-sided massacre. Countless 9 Serenities demons were torn apart. Half a day later, the entire plaza was filled with the corpses of the 9 Serenities demons, and the phoenixes' casualties were negligible. In this way, the phoenixes completely occupied the nest of the netherworld demon. The rest of the phoenixes were cheering and jumping for joy. However, the giant phoenix was unable to feel happy, because it was too smooth. It was as smooth as a trap set by the enemy. "Your Majesty, the gate is already open. I'm willing to lead my clansmen over to take a look," the black phoenix said. The giant phoenix nodded, but warned, "Be careful, there might be a trap." Was it a trap? The black phoenix nodded and led 8 other phoenixes into the black gate. As expected, the black phoenix immediately sensed an aura that was different from the ancient god realm of 9 Nether. The outside world. It was the outside world. The black phoenix was excited. However, when his vision cleared up, what caused his heart to skip a beat was that what stood before him were hundreds of thousands of netherworld demons. The 9 nether demonic empress was at the forefront. She sneered, "I've been waiting for you for a long time." "A trap. This is a trap." The black phoenix turned pale with fright and hurriedly retreated. However, when he retreated, he realized that the giant door behind him had already disappeared. The true black gate transformed into a small and exquisite door and appeared in the palm of the 9 nether succubus empress. "Capture them," the 9th nether succubus empress said indifferently. Dozens of powerful 9 Serenities demons began to chant. Their beautiful voices were filled with charm, causing them to fall unconscious on the spot. After that, he was successfully captured by the netherworld demon. "Hee, let's go and meet that Phoenix King." The 9 netherworld's charm sneered, and the pitch-black gate in her palm grew to a size of tens of thousands of feet, allowing 100,000 9 netherworld's charms to pass through it and enter the world on the other side. The giant phoenix stood in front of the gate with its eyes closed. Everything that the black phoenix had experienced had already been seen by the heavenly eye. He suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, "It is indeed a trap. Everyone, retreat." Thus, tens of thousands of phoenixes immediately flew out of the cave. But just when they thought they could retreat calmly, a muffled sound came from the cave. The space in which the cave was located collapsed. This caused the entire cave to rumble, cutting off the only way out for the phoenixes to leave this place. The giant phoenix's eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. The aura of a spatial domain. That human, how dare you? He had never thought that Su Yu would dare to scheme against him. No, how did Su Yu know that it was a trap? Could it be that he had already seen through this trick of the 9 Serenities demon to lure the snake into the hole? That was indeed the case. It was precisely because of this that he dared to temporarily cut off their path of retreat and let them fight against the 9 Serenities demon. From the moment Su Yu sent himself to his death, Su Yu had already started plotting. One group of you dig the way out. The rest of you fight with me. It was as if they were facing a great enemy as they faced the 9 Serenities witches that kept pouring out of the pitch-black door. The strongest among them, the 9 Nether Demonic Empress, held a purple feather in her hand. Looking at the small pagoda, the giant phoenix revealed a hint of fear. No wonder you were able to open the door to the outside world. Turns out that you have a feather of the ancient god of the netherworld. That feather actually belonged to the ancient god of the 9 Nether. At the roots of the hair, there was a faint trace of ancient god blood. Haha, old phoenix, hand over ancient god 9 Nether's mouth, and I'll give you a quick death. It turned out that the reason they were able to become the rulers of their respective regions was because they possessed the parts of ancient god 9 Nether's body. It was different from the items left behind by other ancient gods. The ancient god domain of the 9 Nether had been frozen in time. The parts on its body seemed to have just fallen off, and the power they contained was terrifying. Dream on. The giant phoenix opened its mouth and spat out a golden nail that floated in front of its chest. The 9 Nether Demonic Empress revealed a look of deep fear. That thing was also an enormous threat to her. It was also extremely attractive. This was also why the 9 Nether Demonic Empress had been unwilling to leave even after opening the door to the outside world for so many years. It was because she still wanted the nail on the giant phoenix's body. If she could obtain it, she was confident that her cultivation would rise to the next level. Let's see how good you are. The giant phoenix took the initiative to attack, transforming into a blur that engulfed the 100,009 Nether Demonic Empresses. Instantly, a large amount of blood shot into the sky. In a single night, he had crushed countless 9 Nether Demonic Empress. The 9 Nether Demonic Empress coldly snorted and charged forward with the purple feather. Kill all the phoenixes. Kill all the 9 Nether Demonic Empresses. The two sides quickly engaged in battle. While the 9 Nether Demonic Empresses had the advantage in numbers, the phoenixes were clearly stronger individually. Thus, for a time, both sides were in a deadlock. Back to Su Yu and the others. They immediately returned to the phoenix nest and hurried to the giant door in the sky. As long as they could reach it, they could successfully leave the ancient god realm of the 9 Nether. However, a colorful figure blocked in front of them without a sound. She turned around, revealing a face that seemed to be smiling yet not smiling. Cold Feather? Yu Xiangwan's heart thumped. Why didn't she go? Where are you guys going? Cold Feather's eyes shone with an unfathomable light. Yu Xiangwan said guiltily, "We're here to look for you." Look for me? Cold Feather smiled, his eyes turning very cold. Just as well, I also have some matters that I need to look for you guys for. She raised her hand and took out an elixir furnace. Inside, there was a blood-colored liquid that emitted a strong fishy smell. I need to borrow something from the two of you. Cold Feather's smile deepened, faintly concealing his continued madness. Yu Xiangwan had a bad feeling. What? Your blood, his soul. Cold Feather's gaze shifted back and forth between Yu Xiangwan and Su Yu. Yu Xiangwan berated, "What do you mean? The Phoenix King personally said that he wanted to groom me, and you dare to harm me?" She suddenly remembered that the Black Phoenix had once said that those things that Cold Feather was fiddling with would cause their deaths sooner or later. Could it be that it was all true? Brother Yu, what's the point of telling the Phoenix Trader about the Phoenix King's orders? Su Yu said dispassionately. Chapter 2556. Traitor? Yu Xiangwan was slightly perplexed. Cold Feather betrayed the giant phoenix? However, the cold smile on Cold Feather's face stiffened slightly, clearly showing a hint of panic. What are you talking about? Cold Feather shouted solemnly. She mistakenly thought that the Phoenix King already knew of his betrayal. Otherwise, how could Su Yu, an outsider, know about it? Of course it was the Phoenix King who said it. Do you really think that the Phoenix King is fighting to the death with the 9 nether demons in the abyss? Su Yu laughed coldly. You underestimate the Phoenix King's intelligence. Cold Feather stared at the abyss guiltily, his heart thumping non-stop. Phoenix King, you pretended to attack the phantom of the 9 netherworlds, but in reality, you were secretly investigating who the spy of the phantom of the 9 netherworlds was. It looks like you have revealed your fox's tail. Su Yu tried to bluff the Phoenix King. The expression in Cold Feather's eyes changed continuously. The Heaven's Eye was a special ability that only the Phoenix King could activate. Only the Phoenix King could share the vision of the other living beings, and vice versa. Thus, she wasn't sure if the Phoenix King had noticed what she was doing. I'll believe a few words? Cold Feather scoffed. She was betting that Su Yu was just trying to scare her. Unexpectedly, Su Yu casually took out a white feather. That feather contained a weak power of the 9 nether heavenly Tao. As long as it was a phoenix, it could be recognized at a glance, because this feather came from the giant door above. As for that giant gate, it had existed for eons. No phoenix would be unfamiliar with it. This is the feather on the giant door? Cold Feather's expression changed drastically. In the entire Phoenix Kingdom, only the powerful Phoenix King could get close to the giant door and pluck its feathers. 1,000 years ago, the Phoenix King had once flown to that door and tried to blast it open. But he didn't succeed. It was just a few feathers that were taken from it. According to the Phoenix King, this feather had extremely powerful defensive properties. Now, one of the feathers had appeared in Su Yu's hand, and Cold Feather's heart thumped wildly. This could only be given by the Phoenix King in secret. Yu Xiangwan and Hall Master Miaoxiang were also extremely nervous. This cold feather was in existence at the Nirvana Void Realm. If they were to give themselves away, they would die without a burial place. Yu Xiangwan suppressed her fear and reprimanded seriously, "That's right. We are all protected by the feathers given by the Phoenix King himself." Hall Master Miaoxiang, and even the little Qilin took out their feathers. Seeing this scene, Cold Feather was utterly flustered. "Come, let's join forces to trap Lingyu and wait for the Phoenix King's return to eliminate the traitor." Su Yu shouted, assuming a stance of wanting to stop them with his life. Cold Feather's mental defenses finally collapsed. Gritting his teeth, he immediately turned around and fled. However, even though the heavens and the earth were vast, the ancient god domain of the 9 nether was completely empty, so where could they flee to? Su Yu and the others looked at her aimlessly fleeing figure and pretended to chase after her for a while. Then, they hurriedly arrived at the Phoenix King's nest. Standing there, the giant gate formed from white feathers was right in front of him. "Get ready." Su Yu immediately used the space domain. The boundless universe pierced through the world and easily pierced through the giant white feather door. Creak, with a soft sound, a crack as thick as a finger appeared on the giant white feather door. Yu Xiangwan and Hall Master Miaoxiang took a deep breath. The exit was right in front of them. "Let's go." Su Yu used the space domain to open the giant door with great difficulty as he sped towards it. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. They successfully arrived in front of the giant door. The giant door had already been opened, and the crack was wide enough for them to pass through easily. Now is the time. Su Yu maintained the crack so that they could pass through first. Yu Xiangwan and Hall Master Miaoxiang went over one after another. Next was the little Qilin, which jumped over with a stomp of its feet. It was on the other side of the giant door. It turned around and urged, "Master, hurry! Behind you!" When the little Qilin saw this, it was so frightened that it screamed and urged. A woman in colorful clothes appeared behind Su Yu with an ice-cold expression. Her face was filled with anger. Clearly, Cold Feather suddenly came back to his senses midway while fleeing. With the Phoenix King's indifference, would he need to go to such great lengths to probe who he suspected to be the traitor? All he had to do was capture the suspect and search their souls. Take 10,000 steps back. Even if they needed to test the waters, why would they send Su Yu and the other outsiders? Absolutely illogical. Therefore, when she returned halfway, she saw the scene before her. Su Yu and the others unexpectedly opened the giant gate stealthily and successfully passed through it. This made Cold Feather alarmed and furious. He was angry because he had been deceived. To his surprise, the giant door actually opened just like that. Die! Cold Feather did not say another word and screamed. A domain condensed from his voice attacked swiftly and violently. Su Yu was enveloped within and immediately felt pain, as if his soul was about to be torn apart. Another moment and his soul would be destroyed and he would die. Soul domain. At the critical moment, he released his own soul domain. In this way, he counteracted the damage to his soul. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he passed through the giant door with a flash. At the same time, he withdrew the space domain. Without the space domain to maintain it, the giant door slowly closed. Cold Feather was greatly alarmed. With a swift dive, he attempted to pass through the giant door in an instant. Space swap. He pointed at the air, and an extremely tyrannical space domain swapped places with Cold Feather with a 9 Serenities crystal in the abyss. Cold Feather, who was about to rush over, was instantly swept into the abyss. However, Cold Feather's abilities were really too strong. Midway, she forcefully broke through the shackles of the space domain and rushed over again. At this time, the giant door was only half the width of a person. She should not have the chance to pass through. But how could Su Yu dare to be careless? Space swap. The second space swap began, forcefully sending Cold Feather far away. Cold Feather flew into a rage and watched helplessly as the giant door that had split open closed bit by bit. Human race, I want you to draw out your blood and eat your soul. As she roared savagely, she burned the colorful feathers all over her body, and with a speed close to space teleportation, rammed over when there was only a trace of crack left on the giant door. Puff, her body slammed onto the feather door fiercely, only to hear an extremely heavy muffled sound. Cold Feather smashed into minced meat. She ultimately still did not manage to pass through. Not only that, she even lost her life. It could be considered that she deserved it. Yu Xiangwan and Hall Master Miaoxiang watched this thrilling scene, their hearts leaping to their throat. So close. Yu Xiangwan patted her chest. Cold Feather ran over, that would really be extremely dangerous. With Cold Feather's horrifying abilities, the few of them could only be like fish on a chopping board, at the mercy of others. Leave this place, Su Yu urged. Although they left the giant door and reached the outside world, this place was pitch black, not knowing where it was. The 9 Serenities Demon's black giant door led to the mine near the Greater One sect. Where the Phoenix's white giant door led to was unknown. Perhaps it was near the Greater One sect, but it might also be extremely far away. However, just as they turned around, a light pop sound fell into everyone's ears. In such a quiet environment, under the circumstances where everyone's cultivation was not ordinary, this light sound was abnormally clear to listen to. They looked back together, only to see that on the closed giant white door, there was actually a drop of blood sliding down the door. That was Cold Feather's blood. Although her body had been smashed, there was still a drop of blood that splashed over when there was only a sliver of it left in the gap of the door. That drop of blood followed the giant door and fell to the ground. Then, slowly, a blue flame emerged. In the flame, a phoenix was constantly taking shape. Phoenix Nirvana. Su Yu clenched his teeth, his eyes suddenly extremely solemn. How could he have forgotten that phoenixes had nirvana? Even if there was only one drop of blood left, it could be reborn on the spot. Moreover, it was different from the rebirth from a drop of blood of ordinary living creatures. Rebirth from a drop of blood often required the loss of 90% of one's cultivation and strength. But the phoenix's nirvana retained all of its essence and returned to nirvana in a complete state. 8 great domains. At this critical moment, Su Yu no longer hesitated, immediately activating the domains. The 8 types of domains condensed into a lotus flower, and its petals withered one by one. This drop of blood's own domain was also constantly being stripped away as the petals withered. The shape of the phoenix that had already taken shape was obviously a little weaker. Yu Xiangwan also attacked mercilessly, the turtle shell spinning as it stabbed toward the ladder. The strength of the turtle shell could even break through the formation of an underground master. This stab immediately caused the phoenix to become a little more blurry. Hall Master Miaoxiang did not dare to be stingy with the treasures she had collected over the years. All kinds of talismans were thrown out, bombarding that drop of blood. However, the 3 of them joined forces and attacked only to delay the time of the other party's nirvana. Whenever they stopped for a moment, that phoenix grew again, and it was getting faster and faster. "Ants, you can't stop the phoenix's nirvana," Cold Feather sneered maniacally. It finally came out. It finally saw the light of day again. Of course, the first thing she wanted to do was to dismember the 2 descendants of the ancient gods into 1,000 pieces. Using their blood and their souls, she would complete the experiment that she had attempted for many years. Once she succeeded, she would obtain unprecedented power. Watching the phoenix grow stronger bit by bit, her rebirth was only a matter of time. The hearts of the 3 of them sank continuously. It was not easy to escape, but in the end, it still fell into the hands of this Cold Feather? Right at this moment, the little Kylan suddenly ran over, opened its mouth, and held the palm-sized phoenix in its mouth. The phoenix seemed to realize something and immediately screamed, "Ah! Beast, what are you doing? Quickly let me out! Let me out!" The little Kylan raised its neck, and with a grunt, swallowed the little phoenix directly. After eating, it even licked its mouth. So delicious! In the distance, Su Yu and the other 2 stared with wide eyes. The Nirvana Void Phoenix in the midst of Nirvana was directly eaten? Faintly, they could still hear the unwilling screams of the phoenix coming from the little Kylan's stomach. On its stomach, the outline of a phoenix would occasionally protrude. It could be seen that the phoenix was still struggling in its stomach. "Quiet down, it's so noisy." The little Kylan patted its stomach in dissatisfaction, and the phoenix's screams immediately stopped. The little Kylan immediately gave a burp. "It's much more delicious than those strange things in the 9 nether crystals," one's stomach full. Yu Xiangwan and Hall Master Miaoxiang were dumbfounded. Chapter 2557. Su Yu squatted down to check the little Kylan's body to make sure that there was nothing wrong with its body or that its soul had not been invaded. After a thorough inspection, deep astonishment surfaced in his eyes. He remembered that the group of phoenixes were particularly afraid of the little Kylan. They called it the Chaos Beast. It was as if they were facing a natural enemy. Moreover, the little Kylan had inadvertently revealed that the aura of the group of phoenixes was very similar to that of the foreign object in the 9 Serenities crystal. So the little Kylan took the risk to try it just now. As a result, this taste was incredible. It found that the 2 were the same thing, so it simply swallowed it. Even a phoenix as strong as Nirvana was swallowed into the little Kylan's stomach and was actually subdued without the slightest room for resistance. "Master, let's go back again. I want to eat them all." The little Kylan bared its fangs and brandished its claws. It was as if eating Ling Yu had opened a whole new door for it. Everyone was frightened when they heard this. "Go back again?" Su Yu glared at it angrily. "Sure, I'll send you over alone." Only then did the little Kylan stick out its tongue. "I was just kidding." The reason she was able to succeed just now was that Ling Yu was in Nirvana. Apart from being difficult to kill, it did not have much strength. And the phoenixes in the ancient god realm of Jiryo were all abnormally powerful. If she went in, she would be courting death. Suddenly, the little Kylan's stomach suddenly growled. The little Kylan felt uncomfortable. Then, with a cry, it spat out a pearl the size of a finger. What is this? The little Kylan touched it with its claws. Are there pearls growing in my stomach? You are not a clam, Suyu said angrily. He picked up the pearl, a hint of surprise in his eyes. It should be something from that phoenix, but even you can't digest it? The little Kylan's stomach was full of chaotic power, and nothing could not be destroyed. But this bead was safe and sound. So much so that the little Kylan's body had to naturally reject it. Let's leave this place first. Suyu put away the pearl. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly looked at the giant white door behind him. He touched his chin and put his palm on the door to explore. After a while, he was surprised. This door seems to be able to be refined from this end. On the other side, the white feather door was full of supreme majesty. But this side had no feathers, and it was like an ordinary door. Suyu tried to refine the door. Who would have thought that he would be able to refine the door with just a gentle sweep of his soul? With a whooshing sound, the giant gate turned into a small gate the size of a palm and appeared in Suyu's palm. Brother Su, what do you want this door for? Aren't you going to throw it away? Yu Xiangwan said with lingering fear. If that group of phoenixes suddenly found a way to open this door and rushed out, just the thought of it was terrifying. Suyu, on the other hand, was deep in thought as he held the giant door in his hand. After a while, he slowly shook his head. As heirs of the ancient gods, you and I have too little to rely on to deal with the descendants of the juggernauts. Suyu said thoughtfully, this door leads directly to the ancient god realm of Jiryu. It might come in handy at critical moments. Not to mention anything else, just the group of incomparably powerful phoenixes alone was an unimaginable force. After stuffing the giant door into his bosom, Suyu started to assess the situation that he and the others were in. They saw that they were in a pitch-black, sunless underground mine. There are traces of man-made excavation. This should be an abandoned mine. Hall Master Wonderful Fragrance had dealt with netherworld crystals all year round, so she was very familiar with these things. As expected, looking closely, there were traces of excavation everywhere. Moreover, the excavation stopped just as they reached the giant door. It looked like the excavator had realized the danger of this door and did not dare to continue digging. Fortunately, the other party was not very daring. Otherwise, someone else would have gotten ahead of them and taken control of the white feather door first. After confirming that it was a mine, they walked in the opposite direction of the direction of excavation. 1 month later, they finally arrived at an exit that had already been sealed. Isn't this mine a little too big? Yu Xiangwan exclaimed. Only our Nanming city, the mine controlled by Empress Star Rain, could possibly compare. Suyu shook his head. He had personally been to Empress Star Rain's mine. There was definitely no other mine that could compare to the scale of the mine in front of them. I'm afraid we have appeared in the territory of an incredible person. Such a huge mine could not possibly be controlled by a small force. Even a large faction like the Tianqi Palace would not be able to control such a huge mine. The person who controlled it must be someone extremely important. Moreover, as they studied the sealing spell, Yu Xiangwan's face was filled with despair. This is a spell close to the level of the Heavenly Lawmaster. It is impossible for us to break it alone. Yu Xiangwan's face was slightly pale. Moreover, within the spell, there is a force second only to the Heavenly Lawmaster. If we forcefully break the spell and activate this force, we will only be annihilated. The Miaoxiang clan master was bitter. They had painstakingly escaped the ancient god realm of Jiryo, only to find themselves in a dangerous place. Were they going to be trapped in the mine for the rest of their lives? Step back, let me try. Su Yu muttered to himself for a long time before finally making up his mind. Yu Xiangwan and Miao Xiangwan were shocked. Su Yu's 8 great domains were indeed powerful, but they had not reached the level of the Earth Master, right? Moreover, the attack of an ordinary Earth Master would not be effective against the spell in front of them. But since Su Yu had said so, they naturally retreated 100 miles. Not enough, move back a little more. Yu Xiangwan was secretly shocked. What was Su Yu trying to do? Was a safe distance of 100 miles not enough? The two retreated until they were 10,000 miles away before Su Yu nodded. Su Yu took a deep breath and took out a fragrant sachet. The fragrant sachet was a defensive item given to Su Yu by the Star Rain Empress. It was a gift from the Time Master herself, but she had given it to Su Yu. She held the fragrant sachet in her hand, and the thunder-controlling 8 extremes set appeared in her eyes. 8 extremely powerful thunderbolts suddenly bombarded the spell above her head. With the power of the thunderbolts, they naturally could not break the spell. But they had activated the majestic power hidden within the spell. A world-destroying fiery light suddenly rushed out of the spell and attacked Su Yu. The power was so great that it far surpassed that of the Phoenix King and the demonic Empress of the Nine Nether. With Su Yu's cultivation, he would die a horrible death immediately. At the critical moment, he threw the fragrant sachet above his head. Boom! A wave of fragrance suddenly emanated from the sachet. The fragrance formed an invisible air shield, enveloping Su Yu within it. The powerful flame attacked the air shield, but it did not budge an inch. Instead, the air shield gradually strengthened, causing the flame to shoot in all directions. A portion of it shot onto the spell. No matter how strong the spell was, it could not block the terrifying flame. Huge holes were melted through the spell. As a result, the formation collapsed on its own. When the flame dissipated, there was still a destructive aura nearby. Yu Xiangwan and the others walked over in fear, staring at the air shield above Su Yu's head that was slowly dissipating. They were extremely shocked. A treasure that can withstand the attacks of anyone below the Master of the Heavenly Law? The Master of the Miaoxiang clan secretly admired Su Yu's endurance. How many dangers had they encountered along the way? But Su Yu had been holding back, determined not to use it easily. Only now did it play an important role in this desperate situation. Su Yu's expression was calm as he said indifferently, "Let's leave this place quickly." The master of this place might have already noticed that the spell had been melted. It would be too late if they did not leave now. The 3 of them immediately left and exited the spell. In the end, what came into view was a world filled with bloody light. The place where they had rushed out was a small island. But outside the small island was a boundless sea of blood. Go! The sea of blood gave the 3 of them an extremely ominous feeling, and they did not dare to stay for even a moment longer. 10 days later, a beam of golden light descended on the small island and immediately appeared near the spell. He was a handsome man with a head of long golden hair. His face, which should have been elegant and calm, was now filled with a gloomy expression. Who can break the seal spell personally bestowed by the Time Master? He was none other than the great Emperor Xiaohao. He entered the mine with some worries in his heart and went all the way to the end of the mine. The white feather gate that should have been here was nowhere to be seen. Who? Xiaohao was furious. He roared at the sky and the whole mine shook. Reverse time. He tried to reverse time and restore the scene to 10 days ago. In this way, he could successfully return to the white feather gate. If he was lucky, he could even encounter the group of thieves who had stolen his belongings. However, only 7 days ago, Xiaohao's face turned pale, and he opened his mouth to spit out a mouthful of black blood. Damn it! Obviously, he had failed. That damned successor of the ancient god Jiulong. It was because he had exhausted his bloodline to fight the successor of the ancient god Jiulong that his bloodline had weakened, and he could not reverse time for too long. 7 days was the limit of what he could endure. After confirming that the gate of White Feather was gone, Xiaohao's face was filled with rage and killing intent. You better pray that you never use the gate of White Feather for the rest of your life. Otherwise, if I find out about it, you'll have nowhere to go. The White Feather Gate seemed to be especially important to Xiaohao. Su Yu and the others were completely unaware of this. After a month's journey, they finally flew out of the Blood Sea. Along the way, Hall Master Wondrous Fragrance had a lot on her mind. Hall Mistress Miaoxiang, do you have anything you want to say? Su Yu was observant, so he noticed that something was amiss with Miaoxiang. Hall Master Miaoxiang said with a frown, I have been in the Greater One sect for millions of years, but I have never heard of such a sea of blood at the southern end of the dream-broken boundary. This sea of blood was extremely vast. It was almost 1% of the southern area of the dream-interrupted boundary. However, she had never heard of it before. It's best to find someone to ask. While Su Yu was thinking, he suddenly realized that there was a rather prosperous city at the edge of the Blood Sea coast. That city was more than twice the size of Southern Bright City. In terms of prosperity, it was several times more prosperous than Southern Ming City. Even before they entered the city, they could feel that there were many strong people in the city. The three of them came to the foot of the city wall, and they could clearly see the three words on the wall. Northern Ming City. Northern Ming City. The three of them gasped. In the center of the southern area of the dream-interrupted boundary was Southern Ming City, and its ruler was Empress Star Rain. In the center of the northern area of the dream-interrupted boundary was Northern Ming City, and its ruler was Great Emperor Xiaohao.